will be presented in two batches, one with the MBTA zoning and one with the.
Okay, I will open up this meeting of the Maynard Planning Board. Today's date is February 13th, 2024, and the time is 7:05 p.m. This meeting is being held virtually on the Zoom link that was provided through the Planning Board agenda submitted through the town website. Please note this meeting is being recorded. We will since this is a virtual meeting, I just need to check in with planning board members that they can hear and fully participate, and I will do roll call. We'll start with Bill Crenshaw. Can you hear and fully participate, Bill?
Yes, I can.
Thanks. Natalie?
Yes.
Annette?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Okay, thanks everyone. And then for town staff, we have Bill Nemser here tonight. Bill, can you hear and participate?
Yes.
And Steve Silverstein, can you do the same?
Yes.
Great. Bill, is there anyone else on from town staff?
I don't think so. And Jeff, our alternate, Jeff Black will not be able to attend. He provided comments.
Thank you.
No, I don't see anybody else from staff at this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, so we'll skip item 1 and go to item 2. Public hearing. This is a continuance of the public hearing for 2 to 6 Powder Mill. This was continued from January 9th, 2024. So now that hearing is reopened. Bill, can you give us, so there's been a lot, what I've seen in the background has been a lot of great work that has occurred in the last handful of weeks or months. Would you mind giving the board an update on status, big picture, and then we'll turn it over to the applicant?
Well, the applicant has made a number of revisions to the submittal that was received originally, and which involved a mixed-use project, which now is turned into a strictly multifamily use, partly at the board's urging and staff's. Comments from all the previous submittals have been reviewed and in an ongoing worksheet shared pretty much almost in real time with the applicant and the planning board's peer review consultant, as well as staff. So that was very efficient in processing various comments and concerns to the back and forth to the applicant and to the board. The most recent revisions were received today. The board has not had a chance to, or I'm sorry, received last night, actually late in the afternoon. Board has not had a chance to review them yet. However, I did upload them, and the applicant will walk through any of the changes that were made. Again, the changes were in response to staff or peer review comments or board comments. We've got the applicant, Adam Stack, is on, and he's got all of his team, and I believe that all representatives pretty much are on here, so we can be able to ask any question the board feels. We can either, I don't know if you have a preference for any documents you'd like to start with, if you'd like to start with the plans or the comment sheet, or however is your pleasure, and we can go from there.
I would turn it over to Adam to introduce his team, and then we can talk about what we're looking to cover tonight after that, if that's okay with you, Mr. Stack.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Attorney Christopher Alphin, Blattman, Bobrowski, Haverty, and Silverstein. My office is in Concord, but I'm also a resident of Maynard, so I'm happy to be here. With us, we have the guys from Landscape and Lighting Architects, Michael D'Angelo and Chris Golden, and Alex Spear and Rob Toricolo from IF Design, our architects on the project. And we also have Jeff Dirk from Vaness Traffic Engineering, in case any traffic questions come up. Thank you, Bill. There was a fine summary. We've been working a lot on this project offline. I think we've made a lot of progress and we've answered all of the peer review comments. We believe that the major concerns have been satisfied, and there's just some minor concerns that are outstanding that we're happy to review this evening, and we hope that those minor concerns can be resolved tonight, and if not, they can be addressed as conditions to a decision. And just to reiterate some of the major revisions since the last time we were here, we're removing all the commercial space and the retail space. So we just have a multifamily use. That is in, we understood the concerns of the board and the abutters, and we thought removing the commercial space would be a much better project that the town could be proud of. We have also removed the access point from Waltham Street. That was another concern of the board. However, there is still an access point for emergency purposes by the request of the fire department. We are also adding a bike and pedestrian walkway from Waltham Street. And we're also making major improvements to the sidewalks into the intersection. With that, I will turn it over to IF Design to go over the architectural plans. After that, we're happy to go over landscaping and lighting. And then if there's any questions or concerns about traffic, we're happy to answer any questions. So Rob or Alex, are you there to jump in?
This is Rob Trocolo. I get the IF Design is a general box that we were using, but my name is Rob Trocolo. I'm the architect for the project. Can I share my screen, or is it,
Yes, one sec. Let me, Rob, you want me to have you under your name to share screens?
yes, under Rob Trocolo.
Okay.
All set?
No. For some reason, Bill, I'm trying to make him co-host. Are you able to do that so we can share screens?
Yeah, let me see here. Is that let's see, where is Rob? I'm going to make Rob co-host briefly.
Okay.
Okay, now try it now, Rob. That should work.
Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Let's see. Might take a second. Did it say that did you accept as co-host, Rob?
It didn't ask me to accept as co-host. Oh, I always said, hold. Let me try. Is that
Yep.
Yeah, now it looks like it's coming up.
okay? You see my screen? Okay, very good.
Yes.
All right, so I've prepared, as you know, Bill, the architectural drawings. I also prepared a memorandum, which I think I'll get to after I just go through the drawings, so that everyone gets a feel for what we've got now, and so. Okay, so as we mentioned before, this is strictly a residential project now. 1 floor of public and amenities and parking, and 3 floors of residential. We've used materials that are sympathetic to the downtown area and done extensive studies of landmark buildings and materials. We've reviewed it all with the peer review, and at this point, there are no unresolved issues with third-party review for architectural. So just basically, I'm going to walk through the building, and then we can get to some of the specifics. So first floor, as you can see, predominantly parking, but it's public spaces down below, lobby, sitting areas, small conference rooms, mail areas, and then what we find particularly useful in these projects is personal storage units that the residents can use. Second floor consists of a mix of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and a single 3-bedroom apartment unit. There is a gym for the residents up above, and there's an interior court to bring light down to the center of the building. Pretty much the same for the 4th level, except that it provide at this point access to the roof. As I said, we did a lot of walking around downtown, looking at various buildings, looking at landmark buildings that were recommended by the planning board and the zoning bylaws in section 10.6. So we are able to employ brick details and even some shapes that are kind of iconic downtown. We've incorporated a kind of a clock tower. We've utilized brick arches at major entry points. We've developed a fenestration pattern that's kind of and it forms an asymmetrical balance. We've used different materials, predominantly brick veneer, but with some mixing in of a smooth cementitious product and wood cladding. And so you can see on the Potter Mill roller elevation, we've also incorporated awnings for a kind of pedestrian scale at the street level. And as was mentioned, the opening on Waltham Street will be closed off. There'll be a temporary or a gate that will only be accessed by the fire department for this. So there'll be no access on Waltham Street. So you can kind of get a sense of the scale of the building. This is a view from the riverside. As you can see, we've kind of undulated the facade there to kind of reflect the river's path and contours. There's some seating areas out there and bike storage. And as I said earlier, there's a light well that goes down to the center of the building, elevator overrun, and access to the roof. All the units on the roof, all the units are on the roof, individual heat pump systems for the residences, and then for some of the public spaces we have air handlers. Just some straight facades. The renderings a little dense at this level of detail, but as you can see, we've got a mix of materials. We've broken it up as per the bylaws. We've got different materials. We've brought in lower scale elements for the pedestrians. Same thing there. So in the elevations basically follow around. You can see the open areas below. And these are these are some studies that we did for number of spaces under the building. Some building footprint calculations and some parking evaluation areas of suitable parking rooms. This is the roof plan. As you can see, there's just in plan what you were able to see a little better in three-dimensional rendering. We did a series of 3 sun studies. This one is at summer solstice. So the left diagram reflects 9 a.m. The middle diagram reflects noon. And the right-hand diagram reflects summer solstice at 6 p.m. We also did a study for fall equinox. Just the left one, 9 a.m. The middle one, noon. And then at 5 p.m., as you can see, this is where most of the shadows get cast at that time late in the day. And again, winter solstice. You can see the sun's at its lowest. No real effects until later in the afternoon. Okay, so I did kind of touch on, and Bill, if I don't know, do you want me to go into detail of, point by point of all the various requirements under 10.6 and under the planning board requirements, or do you just want to speak to it generally?
Rob, I'll defer to the chair on that one. I do appreciate you providing this for the board. As I think it's critical, but I don't know. Mr. Chair, what would you prefer?
The point of considering design review from an architectural standpoint is to ensure that the design is basically commensurate with other elements in town, that it basically fits. And
That's
so if perhaps, Rob, maybe a truncated version of how you believe this design, and you covered it a little bit already, but maybe a little bit more on how this design fits into the larger picture of Maynard downtown and this area of Maynard, because that's the criteria for our judgment, is whether essentially it fits. And then we'll, we're working under this is the design review portion of this hearing. Maybe then I'll turn it over to the board for questions on architectural design at that point. Does that sound fair?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, and as you noted, under the zoning bylaws, the town has enacted these to ensure high standards of design, preserve and enhance architectural integrity and character, high quality, complement the downtown area, maintain coherence and harmony, and again exhibit high quality. Planning board standards are similar, demonstrate coherence and harmony, and also this item here. As I said, we went through an extensive review with the third-party review, and as I said, we have no outstanding items with them at this point. So I can go through a little of that. But basically, what we did was the first thing we did was we took a walk downtown. We noted the buildings that were mentioned by the planning board they're in the bylaws in 10.6, and we found buildings that, in addition to the landmark buildings, that suited the kind of what we wanted to do and the high quality that you expect. And so what we did was we incorporated those details into the design. As you know, you've got kind of an iconic clock tower. We incorporated that into the design. There's a lot of nice brick detailing around town. We incorporated that into the design. We maintain the connection to the river, use that as an asset, as mentioned in the bylaws. And then as far as general massing and architectural fenestration facades, we kept those within the requirements, and relationships to the neighbors. We tried to locate the building in a manner that was consistent with that approach. And we also took into account Maynard was the first metropolitan Boston region community that enacted complete streets. So we looked at things that would help with achieving those goals. Safe, accessible options for pedestrians and vehicles and bicycles. So we've got bike storage. We've got enhanced pedestrian experience. We've made the connection to the river, and and like I said, I can go through, point by point if you want, but I'll just kind of highlight it. We've used elements that echo the iconic images of, the architectural elements of things like the mill, the clock tower. And you guys, I'm sure you know all your specific guidelines in great detail, but we try to create facades that were at a human scale, encourage pedestrian interest and activity. We did that with we have awnings along the street. We have arched openings to invite pedestrians in. Some brick screenings and some nice elements of landscaping on the building. We also have an internal courtyard that brings light back into the center of the building. And then, as I said, in order to make it interesting, we created kind of an asymmetrical balance of the facade, and not just a symmetry that's kind of boring, but just something that is interesting. We reflected in the windows some of the detailing, the stone sills, similar elements in the lower levels of storefront public spaces. Adhere to ADA requirements, as I said, presented arched openings to kind of suggest more pedestrian and suggest openings and welcoming spaces. And as far as materials, I can quickly flip to the 3D peer review and show you samples of the bricks if you want, and the cementous materials and the wood cladding. And as I said before, we're trying to follow the aspect of the path, and pedestrian features, signage and awnings, and I can show examples of that as well. And as I mentioned storefront earlier, but building systems, we located building systems so that they can't be seen from the street. We locate mechanical units on the roof behind the parapet wall. And if you want, I can.
Well, maybe this is a good time to ask Jim Thorne. Would you mind introducing yourself? Because I'll have a question for you.
Hi, I'm Jim Thorne, project manager at Green International.
Thanks,
Big
Jim.
PRV
And
team.
for the record, Jim's leading the peer review for the Maynard side on this. Jim, there's a few statements on that the architectural review was reviewed by peer review, and basically the comments in that have been closed out. Can you confirm or provide commentary on that?
That's correct. We did have some additional follow-up comments after the initial review, and they provided some additional images and responses to close out those last remaining comments. So currently they are all addressed.
And for the record, who is the architect reviewing those, or the firm or the person?
It was Shanali from Arrow Street.
Thank you. Bill Nemser, does staff have a recommendation on the peer review design on this?
Staff is satisfied with peer review design. It meets the intent and goals of the zoning bylaws as well as the planning board rules and regulation. There was I commend the team on addressing this in a manner that is straightforward and demonstrates consistency with the regulatory framework.
So back to Rob and Chris Alphen, and if you feel free to present more, but I'm happy to turn this over to the board for comments now. It seems like a good point to do so.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman. That would be fine. Yep.
Oh, okay. So I'll turn it over to the board. Board members, any comments or questions on design review?
I got a few.
Good.
The architect mentioned that the building had some complete street design elements, and I guess I missed it. Where's the bike lockers in the design?
They're right down here in the back on the road.
Rob, would you mind being able
Oh.
to zoom in and
Yeah, I'm
present it a
doing
little
that
bit
right
better?
Can you see that? Can you see it now? Along the back here. Along the river.
So the tenant's bike storage, the 24/7 storage is just a rack outside, is that the deal?
Yes.
To clarify, is that is that publicly accessible for the public, or is that just intended for members of the building?
I believe it's intended for to be able to be used by the public as well.
Is there a separate bike storage for residents of the building?
Other than there are personal lockers that are available to residents within the first floor as well.
Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, I guess you might have touched on one of the other two questions I had. One is, it's that little patio place there. Is that supposed to be the public access for the open space commitment for the DOD requirements?
Yes.
All right, so Chris, I think we at some point need a significant discussion on that, because I mean it's just basically an extension of the parking lot with a couple non-handicap accessible benches, and it's basically a place to smoke a cigarette. I mean, I don't think it's worth $150,000 that we could use for other open space.
I think there's some misunderstanding here, Bill. I think we'll get to I think, to me, the umbrella discussion is about the development agreement, which includes that item. And just to focus the conversation, I do want to get to that tonight, and I'm sure Adam and Chris Alphen would prefer to get to that tonight too. Can we hold on?
Yeah, as long as we get to it, that's fine.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do it
Yep.
now, no, but I just want to make sure we did it, because wow, it's
I
under
I-
impressive.
I agree.
The big thing, can we get a view from Waltham Street of the emergency exit?
Yeah, there'll be a fencing or railing installed here so that vehicles can't enter here.
Okay, I mean, so part of the issue with this access point was the traffic, and that's been taken care of if it's just an emergency exit only for the fire department. But there's the other issue of, chewing up ground level downtown facade with parking views. So I'm trying to figure out what we can do there instead of just some little gate. And I'm thinking, and maybe our peer review can help here, I'm thinking a roll curtain, and maybe we can do something with that, the outside of the curtain to make it look like brick, or we could just art it up and have a little mural or something. I mean, can we do something that will close off that entrance visually until it needs to be open?
Yeah, we can do something. We could, something maybe similar to what you see to the right of it, some kind of landscaping or a rolling gate or something that carries the facade through. Yeah, we can do something that'll make it look, that'll blend in a little better.
Just to add, I typically stay away from deciding what the gate should be without the fire department having a say and ultimately the determination. When I draft decisions for towns, I usually leave that open for the fire department to have the gate to be whatever they most prefer, just for safety reasons and the most practical thing they want for access. And I usually leave that open-ended for the fire department to decide.
Well, that's great, Mr. Lawyer, but that's not how I do it. I want to make sure that our architect people, both the peer review and the developer architect, understand. You understand what a roll down door looks like? You know, like, I mean, there's a lot of them downtown Boston. They just pop up as you approach, but then the curtain comes back down. And I think we could do something pretty good here if you put some thought into that. So that's something I'm going to be expecting. I do not want a big, wide, empty view of a parking lot with a little gate bar. Not in my downtown.
Anything, both for Bill, Mr. Chair, and Attorney Alvin. I did speak with the fire chief today, and the fire chief gave general direction regarding the design. But that's something that I believe that I could communicate that very quickly when something's proposed. And I'm certain the fire chief would understand. And if it's something that's at all feasible, we can work that out. But I will take it up with the fire chief. But she's aware of the issue and knows that we're working on the design.
And it is our intent to make it as attractive as possible as well, so.
Bill Crenshaw, do you have other comments on design review?
Just a little one, although this might overlap another topic. The awnings on Powder Mill, do they have lights under them?
Yes, I believe they do.
Okay, thanks.
So something to note to cover when we talk site plan and lighting for the applicant's team. Other planning board members, comments, questions?
Most of my comments have been covered. I just wanted to thank the applicant for including the sun study. It was really good. It was important to see, you know, the scale of the building compared to the surroundings and how it would affect the surroundings throughout the year. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay. Unless there's other comments from the planning board, any others? Okay. Chris Alphen, I take it you're leading this conversation for the applicant, so I'll refer to you. You know, we can cover the items I would like to cover tonight. Site, you know, an update on the site plan.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Discussion of, yep. Mhm.
yeah, go ahead. If it's all right with you, I'd like to move to landscaping and lighting.
Yep,
If,
we can do that.
If Chris Golden is here and can jump in and just go over the updates with landscaping and lighting.
Yep, happy to. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, Chris, I'll make you co-host, and I think that will, let's see, I gotta find you here. Do this. There's... Bear with me 1 second. All right, you should be co-host, Chris. It might ask you. So just accept it and then you can share.
Yep. There we go. How are we looking? Can everybody see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Golden. I'm a project manager with Michael D'Angelo Landscape Architects. So we had updated our plans a little while back after our first meeting. One of our comments was to include an existing conditions plan, which you're looking at now, showing the existing building on site, as well as the existing conditions for the abutters, surrounding sidewalk, and then the back of our property there up towards the river, as well as a couple views of the existing conditions as well. This is looking down Waltham Street towards the intersection This is kind of across the intersection. And then this is a view from Powder Mill Road. Looking at the existing building there. And then we received some comments asking to have the proposed grading included on our site plan as well, which is highlighted all in red here. On the back, kind of highlighting the stormwater basin in the back between the building and the river. We received a few comments about adjusting some plant material along the roadway here to improve visibility. We had a couple taller grasses that have been swapped out for some lower ground cover. There was one comment about adding a tree in this plant bed here that we determined we weren't able to do because of the fire hydrant, and we have some water lines underneath that plant bed. So we wanted to keep the plant material small in case the line ever had to get accessed. We also received some comments about studying the ability to include street trees along the facade here on Powder Mill. But we determined, I think it's like a 6-foot cross section between the face of curb and the face of our building, which we didn't think was going to allow for an adequate pedestrian experience there in order to, by the time we provide enough room for a significant size tree, would cut the sidewalk down too small in that area there. We included some notes about irrigation. There were some questions about that in our previous meeting, basically about controlling or having controllers, different types of zones, as well as rain sensors to make sure it's not running when it doesn't need to, and about efficiency levels of drip irrigation in all the plant beds. We also provided a performance spec for how that system should work, because typically for a job like this would be a design build sort of application with contractors. We sort of provide guidelines, and then they'll do shop drawings once the final layout of all the hardscape and everything is there. Then the irrigation consultant will come back in and kind of do a drawing for that. Let's see. We provided specifications for the seed mixes that are proposed for the areas along the river there. They're either steep slope mixes, all containing native wildflowers and grasses, and then also a retention basin mix that's intended for a wetter condition, which is where that retention basin would be. So it should be species that'll thrive in that kind of condition. Planting details. We were asked to provide lighting cut sheets as well as bug rate for all of our fixtures that we provided on the site. So that's in that chart here. And then cut sheets for each of the proposed fixtures as well. And then we were also, there was some concern about the exposure of the retaining wall. Let me flip back to the plan here for you. So that is along this side to our neighbor along Powder Mill here on the right side of the plan. And we did kind of a before and after. The max height of this wall is around 8 feet. And then there will be a guardrail on top of that, since that's a fall hazard. And then we're proposing a staggered row of arborvitaes along that wall. So this upper elevation is roughly what those trees would look like on installation, which is roughly 6 feet tall, is what we have called out in the plant list. And then after, I think this is showing 4 years of growth. Those trees grow pretty vigorously. They should be 10 to 12 feet tall, and more or less block out the majority of that wall from the neighbors next door. And I think that's the big updates from us. The photometric plan was updated for the previous design to make sure that there was no light being cast outside of our property line along the abutters on Powder Mill, as well as along the back of the property line along the river. Where we did have entrances for the building. There was light cast beyond the property line onto the sidewalks. But that was primarily for building entrances. And based on the more recent update, our plans need a little bit of an update themselves. It looks like there was a couple of entrances removed on this this side access off of Powder Mill Road. So those lights will be removed, which would decrease any light that was cast on the game store on the corner. But other than that, I think the photometric plan pretty much shows where we're at in terms of lighting and trying to be respectful for our neighbors. And we did receive today, it wasn't included in the documents you guys received, but one of our updated comments was about breaking up the site into different zones of use and measuring the average light levels across those zones of use. So like the uncovered parking in this zone, and then the covered parking where these darker blue lights are shown, so we can provide more information about the light levels in those specific areas as well. And I think that's where we're at with the landscape plans currently.
Thanks, Chris. Chris Alphen, it's your presentation, so is this a good time to ask for board input?
Board input and peer review input, if there's anything related to traffic, related to lighting and landscaping.
Jim Thorpe, would you mind, sorry, Jim Thorne.
No worries.
Jim Thorne, would you mind?
He's famous, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Jim.
We did have, so for landscaping, it looked like we closed out most of the comments for peer review. I think one of the comments were recommended as a condition of approval. And then the other comment was related to the landscape maintenance plan, and the applicant's response was that the owner will provide the maintenance plan. So we weren't sure if that would be a condition of approval or if that needed to be submitted as part of the submission. And then for the lighting, I think that we had a decent amount of comments that were still open. I think a lot of them were related to the dark sky compliance, because the Maynard regulations adopted the dark sky compliance, so we reviewed it based off of that. So we had some open comments, and I do have our lighting designer here tonight if we want to go through any of those in more detail.
If the applicant feels it's helpful at this time, I'm happy to allow that.
That would be terrific. Thank you.
Go ahead. Jim, go ahead.
Okay. So Lucas from Green, I don't know, Lucas, do you want to kind of go through some of the open comments that you had?
Sure, thank you. Lucas Sturm with Green. Let me just go into my comments here. So the first comment had to do, and actually it wasn't just the first one. It was a couple of them had to do about the hours of usage. So under dark sky design guidelines, what they recommend is that lights that don't need to be on all night don't stay on all night, or at least that they get dropped down to a lower level after hours. So right now, and the latest response we got, which was response 3, mentioned that the exterior lights will be strictly photocell controlled, which is a change from the original response, which said that it would be a combination of timers and photocells. So if the lights are just photocell controlled, they will be on at full, and then they will be off at dawn, so that doesn't meet the dark sky guidelines. So that's an open question that we have about the exterior lighting and how it will be controlled, and why it was chosen to take the timers off the table, because that essentially puts the plan out of compliance with the landscape regulations.
Lucas, do you want to just continue on if you have any
Sure.
other
Yeah.
comments,
of
and
course.
then we'll just turn it back
Yeah.
over to the applicant?
So let's see, the next one was also about dark sky compliance, hours of usage. Then I asked about the breaking out of the plans, and the reason for that, just so everyone understands, is we want to look at each of these areas and make sure that they're being lit appropriately and that the areas aren't being overlit. So we can't do that by looking at the entire site. We get guidelines from the Illuminating Engineering Society for certain areas. So, uncovered parking lot, there are certain light levels that we'd be looking for. And we just want to see whether those are being met, if they're being exceeded. So, and we have no way of doing that without seeing those areas broken out, which is why we're requesting that information, just in case that wasn't clear. Let's see, response to photometric plans by area calculation needs to be broken out. I think that's it. It's really, we were asking for the plans to get broken out and for an explanation of the controls.
So if I could summarize, one comment is about the reasoning behind not having timers and controls that are being able to be submitted for these plans. And then the second comment is that you need additional information just to confirm if this meets the dark skies policy based on sub areas of the site itself.
Correct. Both of the questions are dark sky related,
right.
And there appears to have been a change at some point by the applicant to go from a combination of timers and photocells to strictly just photocells. So at first we were asking, what is that combination of timers and photocells? Recognizing that some lights need to be on for safety reasons, after hours, on all the time at full. But if the entire site is now on photocell, it wouldn't be compliant with the dark sky guidelines.
Thanks, Lucas. I'll turn it back over to the
Of
applicant.
course.
I just want to say something about the lighting real quick. I think we did a lot of work in the last, month to 2 weeks, and we just didn't have all the information for this lighting to be done. And I really wanted to hear the responses from the peer review on what's the best route to do this. And now hearing that the photocells and the timers make more sense in breaking it up into different zones. Again, happy to work towards that and even make that, a condition of the special permit if needed. But that's probably why you see that this, one of the holes is that, and it was just, we didn't get to that 100% and was just looking for guidance from you on that.
Okay, I'll turn it over to the board for comments on landscape and lighting.
I'll go first. If we could just look at the row of arborvitaes for a second. I
You
know
want to
that
see the elevation or the plan? Sorry.
this is good. This is good. I'm just wondering, because the proximity to the property line, the thing about those arborvitaes is that they theoretically get 12 to 15 feet tall, but in reality they do tend to grow quite a bit taller than that in my experience. And they get quite wide as well. So I'm just wondering, they commonly get at least, 8 to 12 feet wide at the base. So I'm just looking at the property line and the proximity to that retaining wall and wondering how this is going to look. It was really useful to see the plan for, what they'll look like 4 years from now. And I think that that's great in terms of height. But, if they're commonly getting 30 feet tall, I'm just wondering in the long run, what the abutters are going to be experiencing in terms of, them encroaching on their property if they get to be, 10 feet wide at the base.
Yeah, no, there definitely are arborvitaes that do get huge. This emerald green that we have specified is a tighter, more columnar form of the tree that typically only get like 4.5 feet wide at the absolute most. So that's why we can pack them in really tight along the property line there. And they typically will get 12 to 14 feet max is usually like their mature height. So that's why we specified that in that area. We tend to use them in these tighter conditions where we don't have a ton of room, where we can't necessarily sort of extend beyond the plant bed that we're given.
Okay.
Other board questions, comments?
Yeah, I got a comment on that same line of trees. One, just out of curiosity, how does one replace one of those trees without going onto the other property?
Asking nicely, I'm not sure.
I just don't understand the geometry of it, because I mean, they're not all going to live, so some will have to be replaced in the first couple of years, and then, 15, 20 years down the road, they got to be all replaced again.
Yep. I mean, a tree of that size, like a 6-foot arborvitae, I think could be done by hand. It doesn't necessarily have to be done with equipment. So I think, like, if we had neighbors' permission, I think they could pretty easily, wheelbarrow a tree back there. If it was one toward the back of the site, it wouldn't be too much of a hassle. Or worst case, like I said, that 6-foot tree is relatively easy to handle. Worst case, they could probably just like lower it down off the edge if they had to, over the off the end of the wall, because I think that wall, like I said, is at its tallest is like 8 feet, so it's not a huge feat to get it down there. It'd be a pain in the butt, but it's not doable.
Okay. Can we look at the elevation?
Sure.
So looking at the full growth, I'm a little concerned just on the full growth picture, because I can still see through it and I can still see the guardrail, and thus I can probably still see the headlights. But I guess my biggest question is, for the first 4 or 5 plus years, the trees will not block the headlights. So what do we do in the interim? Is there some sort of solid screening we can do on that guardrail for the first 4 or 5 years until the trees grow and they take over that job? What are the options?
Yeah. So the guardrail has plenty of opportunity to provide a solid screen there. It doesn't have to be slats. I think we showed that just so that you could also see the orientation of the cars and their level of headlights there. But that could very easily be a solid guardrail as well. That would take care of, I would think, most of the headlights, short of a really big truck or something.
Then I got 2 light questions. Along Powder Mill, earlier was pointed out that the canopies have lights under them, but I didn't see that on the photometric numbers.
Yeah, this plan is outdated a little bit. This is from when we still had retail on the ground floor. So we had a light at each at each door. But now that we only have that one, right, Rob, there's only that one main entrance on Powder Mill. We can get these updated to include a light under those canopies if that's the design intent.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, I'm just saying, because that location is extraordinarily dark. So some light on the sidewalk would be a good safety improvement. And then the last one's just a little one. Under the building, the lighting, I assume it projects from the ceiling a little bit, and I just want to make sure that you've worked out the clearance for the emergency vehicles, especially that one at the exit.
The lights under the garage or in the covered portion of the parking lot, I believe are intended to be flush with the ceiling there.
Those would be recessed lights.
Yeah.
Recess
Oh,
them, so.
okay. All right, good. Thank you.
Bill Nemser, Jeff Black, one of the planning board members, had at least one question about lighting. As we're going through this, can you pull it up, please?
Yes, let me,
And while you do that, I'll ask if planning board members have other questions, comments about landscape and lighting.
Do you need me to stop sharing, Bill?
No.
oh, that's probably why. We'll see. No, I think I can do it. So I just need to get it out here.
Can I ask one question? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I just heard that the lights in the garage were recessed. Right now, they're being shown as flush mount to the ceiling. So will that sheet be updated, the L5 sheet?
I understood as flush mount and recess being interchangeable.
Oh, okay.
But maybe you could distinguish it for me, because
Sure, it just sits on the ceiling versus sits inside of the ceiling. So here, the G1, which is what's shown in the garage, says flush mount ceiling garage light.
I think I agree with the chair. I think that the terms are interchangeable.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So it's a language thing. Cool. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
go ahead.
Is there any lighting near the dumpster and the moving and delivery space? And also, I noticed that there's snow storage where there's some green there.
Want to make one comment about the snow storage on that plan. Again, that is not going to be snow storage there. There will be no snow storage on site. It's from an older plan, and in the newer plans it shows no snow storage there.
Thank you.
So for the first question from Annette, Chris Golden maybe might be for you.
Yeah, so there is pole lighting along this property line on the right here. These green squares are pole lights which cast onto the trash area, and then there's also wall mounted lights on the building that are kind of casting from the other side as well. So that area should be pretty well covered.
And the move-in and delivery space and dumpster and trucks. What about safety in that area? It seems like it's really congested.
When we talk traffic, Annette, could we have the applicant answer the question then? Would that be okay?
Yes, fine, thank you.
Okay.
Chris, I have Jeff's comment.
Yes, could you just read it?
Yeah, one has already been answered. That was about, he was asking about the timing. That's already been addressed. The other one, it was a question, would reducing the lighting, or I should say, is the lighting on the pole adjacent to the abutters, will that be less obtrusive than something that could be proposed on the building? He wasn't sure, he was asking, and I didn't have the answer. But it was just what would be the most advantageous to minimize any spillover towards the abutters property.
Yeah, so the the photometrics have been updated so that these pole lights along that above the abutter's property are not casting any light. So there should be zero spillage onto that property now. And to that point, I think having those pole lights there is going to be more helpful because they can cast light away from the property, as opposed to if we put more light on the building pointing towards the abutter, I think they're going to end up seeing more sources of light. And they're going to be having more high powered lights pointed at them. If that makes sense.
Yes. Okay, thank you. I'll relay that to our absent member, but that's I think that's helpful. Thank you.
I had two questions. I looked over this before but I just wanted confirmation. I did not see light spillage off the property line, but can you confirm that's the case? And besides the sidewalks, of course.
Yeah.
But,
So since our last meeting, all the light spillage has been reduced to zero on the outside of the property line, along this abutter, and then along the back property line towards the river as well.
Related to that, I echo what Bill Crenshaw said as well about lights along the sidewalk on Powder Mill. I would be very fine if we had let the lighting that was considered there to be part of, not to replace or anything of public safety, but just be considerate of a pedestrian access point. And so I would be fine for robust lighting there as necessary. And then for the landscape plan, our landscape plans we don't need to have any details about access necessarily to replacement of items, but from my perspective, the rules of thumb I've carried in the past have been about 10% of plantings perhaps die in the first year or two. We all have different rules of thumb, but the replacement should be discussion of replacement of material should be included in the landscape plan. If the applicant would like an example of landscape plans that we've seen in the past, I'm sure Bill Nemser can give an example of landscape plans that we've seen in the past. I don't think we need anything substantial. I think it just needs to, cover the basics, where things are, how they're going to be maintained, how they're going to be replaced.
Fair enough.
Okay, so for me, that covers landscape and lighting on my end. Chris Hoffman, do you have a sense of where you would like to go next?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, point of clarification, if I could.
Yes.
I just want to, I'm trying to copy this on the landscape plan. You're asking for a maintenance plan, a revised maintenance plan, or a supplemental maintenance plan, correct?
I was under the impression there wasn't a maintenance plan yet.
Right, okay.
I could be wrong.
Well, I guess my question is the same as Bill. Are you looking for a full-blown maintenance plan, or just general comments about where things are going to be planted and what we're going to do for replacement? My hesitation of doing a full-blown maintenance plan is you sometimes don't know who the operator of the apartments is going to be. And sometimes that's why I'd rather be a condition that we provide a maintenance plan before, COs are issued or something like that, so that the operator is the one who puts together the maintenance plan in case the applicant is not the operator of the business later on.
I'll answer the first question first. My perspective is the details of maintenance plan should be commensurate with the site itself. A large, if you go down the road here, there's Maynard Crossing. It has a market basket and all of that. That has a very robust maintenance plan, landscape maintenance plan. That's not this. That's not what we would be looking for here. I think it would be a very truncated version of that. But yes, we can, if the board chooses, we can condition for that to be submitted, before CO or something of that nature, or however we decide.
Very good. With that, is Jeff Dirk available to briefly go over traffic?
So I am available, Chris, and I don't know, whoever was controlling the screen, if you wanted to put the site plan back up, that might be helpful. Mr. Chairman, by way of introduction, my name is Jeffrey Dirk. I'm the managing partner with Van Essen Associates, and we're the transportation consultants for the project. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Just by way of an update as to where we are with respect to transportation, we did receive peer review comments from Green. I think we've had a couple of rounds of back and forth with them, and we're in the process of preparing an updated transportation assessment to address the latest round of comments. As those comments relate to what we're preparing, they're really just a few refinements to the analyses that have been presented previously. Those refinements deal with removing what we call a COVID adjustment, which traditionally has in the past been applied to traffic counts in the area. And your consultant will affirm that that's no longer required by MassDOT. And in fact, they do not want to see COVID adjustments applied to numbers. And the reason for that is two things. It's really, we're back to what they're considering a new normal, and we're starting from what exists today and going forward from there. The second thing is, as we're looking at impacts and looking at potential improvements on the transportation infrastructure, there's also the thought of we don't want to overinflate volumes so that we're building more than what's actually needed. So that's another reason for that. So we're removing that COVID adjustment, which will result in some lower baseline traffic volumes. The other thing associated with that as well is there was some consideration for the uses that occupy the existing buildings that are on the site. So we reflected in our analysis what the traffic characteristics of those existing and former uses of those buildings might be. We're removing that. So the net effect of removing both of those conditions is we're starting with a more realistic baseline condition. And again, as your consultant will affirm, that allows for probably a more realistic assessment of the impacts of the project, because we're not assessing impacts based on so-called inflated traffic volumes. So that's the first level of new analysis that we're providing. The second part of it deals with the assignment of trips as they relate to the project. There's a couple of ways to do that. Once we've estimated the amount of traffic that's generated, we need to figure out how much traffic might be traveling down Powder Mill to the north using Waltham Street and such, and to distribute to other roadways. That can be done using existing traffic volumes, but the more accurate way to do it with residential projects is to use US Census data. So that census data gives us an idea of you live in the town of Maynard, where do you go to work? And then we look at that information to see when you report where you go to work, what is the quickest way to get there from this project site? So it provides a little bit better of a baseline for us to look at assigning the trips from the project. So we've done that as well. So we'll be providing that report to the town and to the review consultant probably within the next week. You will not see anything significant changing from what's been presented to you before. Just to put it in context, the project now, with the removal of a little over 9,000 square feet of commercial space, and now we just have the residential building at about 36 units of multifamily housing. The project's going to produce fewer than 20 vehicle trips during the peak hour. So that's fewer than one additional vehicle every 3 minutes. So that level of impact is not something that is going to result in changes in queuing or increases in delays at intersection. Now, I preface that only in saying that doesn't mean that things get better if they're currently operating poorly. But what it does say is how we impact those operating conditions is not significant to the extent that you're going to see drops and changes in level of service. What we've estimated in terms of impacts of the project is really no more than a 5-second increase in delays at any intersection along Powder Mill or along Waltham Street, particularly at the signalized intersection. So less than 5-second increase in delay. So again, not significant. I would mention that as we look at the site plan and the refinements that we discussed tonight, probably one of the most significant changes as it relates to traffic is the idea of the Waltham Street driveway going away and being converted into an emergency access, having the traffic come out on Powder Mill. That's a significant change as it relates, and it's actually beneficial to traffic operations. First off is when we look at operating conditions, the Waltham Street corridor is where, as you probably experience, is where we have delays in queuing, particularly coming into the intersection of Powder Mill. So getting the driveway off of that street and putting it over into Powder Mill allows for traffic to enter more or less on a lower volume street with less queuing. The other thing as it relates to the Powder Mill driveway is purposely designed. You can see the driveway is as far away from the signalized intersection as we can make it. The exiting movement is about 150 feet away from Waltham Street, from where the curb line extension is. What that does is, we're looking at our revised analysis, is it actually positions the driveway outside of the longest predicted queue on that approach. So again, as a benefit for the project, it allows vehicles to be able to exit that driveway and enter into the back of the queue rather than trying to come out in the middle of the queue, which is something that is not desirable in any situation. So we think that's obviously an improvement. So you're going to see all of that presented as a part of the revised analysis. Again, it will be responsive to each of the comments that have been raised by Green. And in fact, we think that the changes both to the site plan as well as from the comments from Green have resulted in a better project. And I think that's what the goal of the peer review is. We think that the revisions to the analysis have kind of taken us in that direction. And so this report hopefully is going to be showing something that will be responsive to Green's comments, but it will also demonstrate that the changes the board has requested, the changes that the peer review consultant have requested, have resulted in a better project from a transportation perspective, as well as all of the other elements that have been discussed tonight. So I'd be happy to answer any questions the board has now or later on in the evening.
Thank you, Mr. Dirk. Jim Thorne, not Jim Tomey, not Jim Thorpe, Jim Thorne. Would you mind giving us the perspective of peer review and the current status from your perspective on traffic?
I think Jeffrey had a good summary of what he stated in terms of what are the open comments. Basically what he started with is kind of the main points that we were commenting on, was the fact that the existing site is vacant and it was accounting for trip generation to a vacant site. And then on top of that, it had adjusted COVID rates. So it was inflating the existing condition, and then it was subtracting that from the proposed condition. So the increase wasn't completely accurate, but based off of Jeffrey's understanding of the comment, it sounds like they are addressing that comment in the next revised report. And that was pretty much our biggest comment in terms of traffic.
And so thank you for that both. Jim, there's numbers mentioned about peak hour rates. Does your team take a look at the peak hours? That's really the crux of board and public concern, would be peak hour.
Yeah, I mean, I believe we reviewed that. Do you know what specific comment that was on?
No, I just wanted to get a
Yeah.
sense, make sure that you had reviewed the peak hour stuff, and that what the applicant said was essentially accurate.
I believe we did a full review, so of the peak hour, and of the impact assessment report. And if our traffic engineers had any issues with it, then they would have had a additional comment on that.
Okay. Mr. Dirk, can we turn to, that was about the external connection of the site. Have you done any work on traffic patterns internally, turning radius and things of that nature, turnings? Yes.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Chairman. I forgot about that in the part of my presentation. So yes, one of the things that we've done is run or performed what's known as an auto turn analysis that you may have heard of, but it's basically taking the CAD drawings that you have in front of you And we use a CAD program that overlays the turning and maneuvering of different types of vehicles onto the site plan. And in particular, in this case, and I know one of the members had some questions about we'll call it the portion of the site in the northeast corner, which is where the dumpster is located. So we did look at maneuvering as it relates to being able to get into the site to service that area and then exit the site. So the dumpster, as it's positioned in the layout in the site, is put in a location where it's reflective of our turning analysis to show that a single unit type of truck, which is a non-articulated truck, which is characteristic of a moving van as well as a garbage truck, is able to get into the site to service the dumpster, basically make a reverse maneuver. So if you picture the truck coming in straight in, picking up the dumpster, dumping it into the back, then it would back up towards the parking garage area and then make a turn and then exit out the driveway. So that's the maneuvering that we checked to make sure that not only can the dumpster be serviced, but that this backing maneuver can take place within the site without going through parking spaces and then the vehicle to be able to exit. So we performed that analysis, and the site plan is currently configured is reflective of the results of that. And we can provide that, Mr. Chairman, as a part of what we provide to Green as well, just to, I guess, back check against the site plan and the layout.
Yes, this board will need to see that turning analysis for, and I'll let board members comment as well, but at least for the dumpster.
We do have a
truck.
drawing of that in the package. There is that
Yeah.
auto turn.
Then we should, can we present that to the board for this public hearing then?
Bill, do you want to take that package up that I sent you, or do you want me to get it out of mine on my screen?
I can get it. I just need if you're ready, it might be easier for you to do it, Adam.
Adam Stack will need to be co-host, Bill, then for him to share.
Yes.
Okay.
And Adam, do you need me to, you got it okay? Is it?
I got it here.
Okay, I mean, were you able to accept co-host? Let me pull it.
I'm pretty sure I have, is that, you see it?
Oh yeah, now it's coming up, okay.
So that's the drawing that shows the auto turn in.
So Adam, unfortunately, I think you have two screens that are being both shared. Yes.
There you go.
And now we're seeing just a document.
This one here.
Yeah, so I can narrate on that, Adam, but basically it's as I kind of just, thank you, that's perfect. So you can see the design vehicle, which is a garbage truck here, which is again, a non-articulated vehicle, which is probably, it's the more difficult vehicle to maneuver because it can't pivot in the center. So you can see basically the trash truck coming in, picks up the dumpster, reverses direction by backing toward the garage and then exiting the project site. And I think the important thing, and looking at this in Green will verify it, is that you don't see kind of maneuvering as it's entering or exiting the project site through any of the parking space areas themselves.
So this drives in straight. picks up a dumpster in the front and then
Correct.
backs up to the west, essentially. And then
Correct. And
turns
there
and drives
may,
out.
exactly, that's exactly right. There may be some needs. So I think what you're seeing in terms of the shaded spaces, and, you know, Adam, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but those are the areas where when there is a dumpster pickup scheduled to occur, those spaces would be designated so that they're not, the vehicle doesn't park there. So the management would basically, you know, put a
Well-
cone or something in those spaces so the vehicle's able to maneuver.
No, actually, those two spots there are designated for Uber delivery.
Even
moving
better.
in and out, so they're not actual parking spots. They're parking
Yep.
spots for that use, but not for the tenants like all the time.
Good. So I think, Mr. Chairman and board members, as you're looking at that, it's just making sure, and your consultant can make note of that, that there's a sign, there needs to be signs placed in those spaces to say that they're, you know, 10-minute parking, something like that, that they're designated for that.
Have you done an analysis for emergency vehicles?
Not as entering the project site, but what I would say is that, so an emergency vehicle as it relates to the site here, and again, I can provide my context to this, but this is 100% up to the fire chief as to how they're going to fight a fire here. An ambulance will be able to turn in the driveway similar to what the garbage truck is showing. A fire apparatus could either fight the fire, obviously, from Waltham Street or Powder Mill Road, which provides access for them to place a ladder to get to the building if there's a structure fire there. The fire truck can also, similar to the garbage truck, in fact, the fire truck turns tighter than what you see as the garbage truck. They will be able to pull into the driveway and drive straight into the project site. They will then back out toward Powder Mill Road. The distance of backing does not exceed the requirements of the fire code, which I believe, and Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is I think it's 150 feet. As soon as you exceed a certain distance of the vehicle having to back up, the fire code says that absent the fire chief deciding otherwise, you have to provide a turnaround. In this case, the distance of backing does not exceed the fire code that would require a turnaround. So if if the chief desires to bring the vehicle into the driveway, it's able to do that without going through parking spaces. It would then need to back out, but that backing distance doesn't exceed the requirements of the fire code. But again, that's my opinion. The chief is the authority having jurisdiction as listed in the fire code. So they're the one ultimately that's got to say that this works for them from a life safety perspective.
Yes, and we will require that the chief signs off on the site plan as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we will, the chief did provide a letter regarding the Waltham Street, but I don't think it covered, you know, all the details, but
Right.
so that will be in your court to convince, not convince isn't the right word, but to get sign off from the fire department.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair, just to refresh,
Yes.
we do have initial comments from the fire chief, which I have ready to go if you'd like to see him. It was when there was still a commercial component, but it seems to address most of this, what you're discussing.
I believe the nature of that letter was primarily to say that that the Waltham Street side entrance could simply be emergency access only. I don't know if it really, I didn't see that it really covered all the turning on this.
No, I don't know if it did, but it was, no, this was from October, and this was regarding where, how the response they anticipated it would, how they would respond, where they'd want to position apparatus, et cetera, and so on.
Yep, I don't see any issue with this. I don't foresee any issue, but you know, you will obviously need fire sign off on this. I'll turn it over to the board for questions and comments on traffic.
I'll just comment that in this, I realize that it's now not perfectly up to date, but the traffic study that we were provided, the peak hour information was indeed included, and it does seem to be everything as as the presenter told us, Mr. Dirk, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
Chris, I got two questions.
Go.
Could we get a view zoomed in on the driveway off of Powder Mill? something that shows the parking layout.
Does this screen still work for you?
I guess I'm looking at that handicap parking space. All right, from this view, it kind of looks like,
I'm gonna find a better one for you. Hold on one second.
And while we wait, Mr. Alphen, would you mind confirming if we're going to discuss, if you're ready to present on the parking spaces and the, the general site plan and layout as well?
We did submit new civil plans. Unfortunately, our civil engineer is not able to attend tonight, but I'd be happy to have your peer reviewer let us know if he has any comments or concerns based on the new civil plans.
So we can just roll into that too, because the nature of Bill's question ties to also civil plans. So
yeah,
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Adam and Bill.
oh, okay. I mean, we could do it later, but I'm looking at that handicap spot closest to Powder Mill. The accessible aisle looks like it goes towards the building to a sidewalk, and does that sidewalk connect to Powder Mill?
Yes.
Does the landscape drawing show that? I thought it was not. I don't think the landscape drawing showed a sidewalk there. Can we look at the landscape drawings? Maybe I'm wrong.
And maybe we pause on that, Bill, and talk traffic, and then we can go back to this just to focus the conversation.
There's a break in that planter along Powder Mill that connects that sidewalk to the street sidewalk.
So traffic wise, I'm just curious about the complete streets element, because
yes,
it seemed a little brief.
Light. Well, light would be probably a kind statement as it relates to that, Bill. So the new traffic study has a more robust discussion as it relates to complete streets. So we did a sidewalk inventory. We also did an inventory of bicycle accommodation. So what you're going to see in the assessment is a sidewalk conditions analysis. I think the area has sidewalks. There are crosswalks and there are accommodations by way of the traffic signals or crossing. The condition of those facilities, however, is something that we've rated as fair to poor. And in need of some repair. And so, we're presenting that as a part of the traffic study as a factual information as it relates to what is going on with respect to pedestrian accommodations. They're there, they exist, and the accommodations are all there for crossing the roads under signal control. However, the condition of some of those sidewalks is, as I said, fair to poor condition and in need of repair and replacement. So that's going to be a part of the traffic study. It was a legitimate criticism from Green as it relates to the information that was presented. So we did provide more of a complete streets discussion on mobility, the conditions of those facilities, and where they might be lacking or in need of improvement.
Are there recommendations included?
I don't know that we've gone so far, and maybe that's something, again, as I know further on in the evening, there's a discussion of a development agreement. I think that's probably where those kind of conversations would take place. We can certainly provide recommendations. I think our recommendation is we have sidewalks that are in fair to poor condition. They need to be replaced to be ADA compliant. So we don't have cracking, we don't have settlement. We have the tactile strips at all of the wheelchair ramps and crossings. So I think as it relates to this area, similar to the site and its current condition, there are improvements that are needed to address complete street standards, in particular reconstruction of sidewalks and providing those ADA accommodations at the signalized crossings by way of those wheelchair ramps that meet the slope requirements and having the tactile strips at the bottom of those ramps. So we've pointed out the deficiencies and where they occur. And I think that, as it relates to the project and where those things might want to occur, I think is probably something that would be put into that development agreement, the extent to which that takes place, and how it relates to the project.
Yeah, because not only is it required, but
yep.
I relate it to the request for relief on parking, since it's going to be a pedestrian-oriented facility. But I just want to clarify one point. You talk about tactile strips at the intersection there, but we're missing some wheelchair ramps too, right?
Correct. There's certain things that, you know, as it exists on the intersections today, I mean, just as an example, you cannot have an apex ramp. And an apex ramp is more commonly what you see, which is it comes out right in the middle of a crosswalk, and then the crosswalk goes in both directions on the intersection. Those things are no longer allowed. And you have to have separate wheelchair ramps for each crossing, so that as a mobility impaired or visually impaired pedestrian is crossing, they're directed right into the crosswalk and are heading in the proper direction across the intersection. So the things like that you're speaking of, yes, there are additional wheelchair ramps that need to be provided, and the sidewalks reconstructed in order to provide those ADA accommodations to meet complete street standards at these intersections.
And also for the crosswalks, what about the, I don't know, pedestrian signals and audibles and things like that?
Right.
Is that all up to par? Or is that-
And so we're wading into, I think, the conversation that I believe Mr. Alphen would like to have about DA, development agreement, in a minute. And I just want to pause to make sure that the applicant is, you know, has the right people speaking for the development agreement. Does that make
I'm
sense, Mr.
not talking
Alphen?
about the development agreement. I'm talking about the traffic engineer laying out the facts. I'm just trying to figure out what the current deficiencies are, so later that could come into the conversation. I don't want this
It's
future conversation
in
supposing.
in the public realm?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have that information, Mr. Dirk?
Yeah, so from a factual perspective, the board member is correct. So he's pointed out the deficiencies as they relate to the need for additional wheelchair ramps to meet the compliance for the crossings. The same is said for the pedestrian push buttons, as you know, as probably you're alluding to. The type of push buttons that are there need to be, they have to have the braille type of indication. So we call them the signs and saddles that go on there. Need to be something so a mobility or visually impaired person can see. There's also the push buttons have to be pointed in the direction of the crossing, so they need to be reoriented. The signal indications need to be the countdown type, so that you don't have just the walking person and the red hand. They need to actually have those, but also have the time for you to cross the intersection, so that's there. And then the audible devices as well. So that all of that needs to be brought into these signals. We think that the hardware is there, but that equipment, so the hardware being the controller that actually, the computer that operates the intersection. However, the equipment that ties into that computer needs to have those adjustments that I just discussed. So it's push buttons, signs, saddles, and what we call the pedestrian indications. Those would all need to be replaced to go along with the construction of the wheelchair ramps.
And are there similar pedestrian deficiencies at the other study area intersection, the one up by the old fire station?
Correct. There are similar type of deficiencies there as well to meet the mobility requirements.
Okay, and one last question on pedestrian access. There used to be a crosswalk painted going across the street to the Jiffy Lube at that little side street there. What do you think about that? Should that go back? Should that be restored, or should that stay gone away?
So I'm gonna, feign ignorance here. How far away from the signalized intersection is that crosswalk, or was that crosswalk?
Basically the
Roughly.
property line.
So so you would not put that crosswalk in only because the signalized crossing is close enough that that's where we want it to take place. The problem with having the crossing, as you've described it, it's a mid-block location, and in particular, we start having those crossings happen where we have cars queued potentially, so you don't have the visibility of pedestrians that you would want to have or do have at the signalized intersection. So, it may be a desire line for pedestrians, but we don't want them crossing there for those reasons. And the signalized crossing is close enough that, it shouldn't be something where it's really a significant distance out of the way for them to travel, and it's actually safer for them to do it at that location.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the board on traffic?
Yes, I have one, Chris.
Yes, Jim.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I have a question on the dumpster area. Do you show one dumpster or two?
So what I'm seeing is one dumpster, and so that's what we're assuming in that location there. And I think for the architect can confirm, but I believe, for 36 units that are proposed, one dumpster should be sufficient if it's picked up, once a week.
Well, what you're forgetting is that we're a recycling community. All right, we should have two dumpsters there, one for recycling and one for regular rubbish. You have 36 units. I think that's far too many to not have recycling.
So is there information on where recycling will be managed on site?
At the moment, that back hashed out area is showing the dumpster, but again, it's also like has space for, I don't know if it's gonna be an actual dumpster or if they're going to be actual trash barrels that can be put aside alongside it, but there is space along there. Again, this is something that we talk about here and can move forward with, but it wasn't something we neglected to have in there. We just don't have the barrels placed around the dumpster area.
Jim, we can talk more about that with this overall site review. Do you have other questions on traffic?
No, I do not.
Other board members? Mr. Alphen, I think we still need to see what were the updates on the civil plans regarding parking and, as you heard, dumpsters and recycling, handicap parking spaces, walkways as it approaches the site and interior to the site and things of that nature. Are you prepared at this time to cover those items?
I'm not sure I am unless Rob or Adam can jump in, or if you could have Mr. Thorne opinionize whether he thinks that there's any outstanding items as far as civil plans go.
We can ask Mr. Thorne, but it's your call if you want to present or if you want to go straight to peer review.
We can go straight to peer review with reserving our right to react to peer review with our civil engineer.
This is not a, yes, there's no reservations required. So Jim, you want to give us a sense on where peer review is at with the civil plans?
Yeah, so we did the initial kind of back check re-review last week, and then Adam was able to send us over revised plans and some additional responses. So we were actually able to close out a lot of the civil comments. Some of the remaining ones are relative to, potential conditions of approval associated with, utilities that need to be reviewed and approved by DPW, as well as approval by, the fire department, and coordination with Mass DOT. Since this is Mass DOT roadway. One of the other open comments that we mentioned was that the transformer that's along the Powder Mill. We want to confirm that if bollards were required for that transformer and if they would be shown. It looks like the applicant did note that bollards would be installed around the transformer, although I don't know if it really has room in the location that it is right now for the bollards. Typically, you need about 10 feet separation between the bollard and where the door is open, and then 4 feet separation between the edge of the transformer and the bollards on the other sides. which would impact some of the parking in that area. And might be shifted back off the sidewalk. Those were our remaining open comments. I know there were a few comments that the planning board had on the civil plans that were still open. You know, relating to, you know, residential visitor parking. You know, there's no designated spots for them, it seems like. Let's see. There's a question about the floor drain, like the trench drain that's underneath the building and that's connected to the sewer, and just confirming that that meets building code, because I think that's within the building footprint. And then I think the board wanted to hear from the applicant more about how they are prioritizing, you know, ADA compliance, walkways, bike storage, et cetera, instead of additional parking. So I think that's my summary of the open civil comments.
Thanks, Jim. My perspective on the civil plans is that I think we would need to see some additional information, definitely with the trash and recycling. I echo Jim's comment that you know, we just need to see where recycling management is, just like we see trash waste management. I'm of the opinion that this application would be stronger. I'm not saying how much stronger, definitely a little bit stronger though, if we had a little bit more robust bike storage, either probably for residents. To me, you know, if we ended up having to lose a parking space to add bike storage, I think that would probably be a stronger application. And my comments previous was just to ensure that the egresses to the building could, you know, walk out to some type of walkway and then connect to sidewalks. I think I saw before there was one egress in the backside of the building that just kind of went to a parking space, I believe. So as long as we're just being thoughtful where people enter and exit buildings, and then that there's proper walk space for them to connect up to sidewalks external to the property, that would be a stronger application as well. Does the board have any other general thoughts to give the applicant at this time regarding site plans, civil plans? And Bill Crenshaw, I think you had some comments or questions about parking spaces and walkways earlier, or was that already addressed?
I was just wondering about the pedestrian connectivity from the handicap spot. And I you know, I haven't seen anything that spells out the dimensions of the spaces, so I don't know if they're asking for any relief on dimensionals as well as number of spaces.
Mr. Alphen and team, do you have any information on any dimensional requests you may have to make for this?
I'm not sure about dimensional. I do know that we're requesting relief by a special permit to allow 40 spaces when 54 spaces are required. That's a change because the formulation has changed because there's no retail space. So it's 1.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit. So the requirement is 54 spaces, and our project provides 40. I will have the civil engineer respond back about the dimensions and whether we need zoning relief for dimensions, but I do not believe so.
I'll say that I in working with Vito that we were not doing asking for relief for those parking spaces, and I just wanted to point out here, I don't know if this answers your question, Chris, but the exiting back here of the building onto the sidewalk that connects to this sidewalk, that connects to a walkway that's gonna be painted in the parking lot that connects to this sidewalk that goes to the bike ramp and back to the Waltham Street sidewalk. So I think we did take that into consideration for people coming in and out of the building to be on the sidewalk.
That does. And I can see that here.
And there's, calls out 9 foot for the handicap spaces here and the space in between. So there are measurements. And like I said, I don't believe we used anything for relief and was without a standard parking spot for the rest of the property.
I agree with the dimensioning. They're exceeding the requirements for dimensioning for the parking spaces. So
Other board comments or questions regarding civil plans, parking? Okay. Hearing none, Mr. Alphen, again, I defer to your team for how you want to proceed with the presentation.
I think that's, we hit all the subject matters. I think the only thing left is to discuss the development agreement. I'll let my client speak to that, but I think it's more something we want to take input from the board, and it's really something that could be worked out offline. But Adam, if Adam submitted my client, Adam submitted a cost sheet going over the development fees. I don't know if the board has had a chance to review that. But again, we're willing to just take in comments at this time.
Bill Nemser, it would be helpful to summarize what the proposal is for the DA regarding and specifically regarding the need for the cost donation for the bonus units for the safe harbor. Can you walk us through that, or can Adam walk us through that, just the bones of it at least, so we can get board feedback?
I think so. Because this project is in the downtown overlay district, it's eligible for a density bonus by using reduced area requirements. So in exchange, the zoning bylaws require the applicant execute a development agreement between the town, which includes the select board and the planning board in this case, and the applicant to make several agreements. One is that this board has worked out a mandatory open space requirement, which can be funded a number of different ways for the bonus units. And the purpose of that is essentially to ensure that there is adequate open space for residents beyond what would normally be permitted on a certain area. There's a number of ways to meet that requirement, and that's something that is typically worked out during the development agreement negotiating process, which is typically takes place offline and then is brought back to the board. At this point, we have a member of the planning board and of the zoning board, as well as OMS director Steve Silverstein, I think it's still, Steve's on there, working on that along with town council.
Bill, I believe it's select board and planning board, not zoning board, correct?
No zoning board.
Yeah, so I think you said zoning board, but I
Oh, I
believe
did?
Yeah, I think so. So I think it's
Sorry.
select board.
Select board and planning board.
Thank you.
Apologies. And there's another requirement also that of a contribution to the open space fund. And typically the types of things that are included in a development agreement are mitigations in other projects. We've had a variety of different ways that a project can meet the intent of the zoning bylaws. And this is typically something that would not be included in a planning board decision. And so in this case, a development agreement is the appropriate mechanism. The types of, the specific mitigation or cost is something that's negotiated, and it still is not entirely worked out, but I think that in general, things are fairly close. One of the other requirements of the development agreement is to take into account timing of certain things and ensure that there's a when there's more details than you typically include in a decision. It's something to tidy up everything and ensure that the long-term intent of the zoning bylaws is carried out with the project. Any questions on that? Is anybody still awake with that after that?
So there's certain costs that are being proposed to account for the safe harbor provision.
That's right. Well, there's an obligation to provide a certain amount of basically safe harbor, open space valuation, and this board worked out a general formula several years ago. So that's how we calculate an amount that's due. Anybody's interested in it, it's in the planning board rules and regulations. I don't have the math in front of me exactly, but there's a number of ways to meet the intent, and some of the past ways have included park space improvement. We've had I think we've had sewer improvements. Can be a number of different ways to do it, but that's having a development agreement is a requirement in the zoning bylaws. So there's been a number of meetings on it. I'm trying to stay focused with this part of the work, but I'm aware of what's going on with the development agreement.
But that doesn't get at the heart of this, and the heart of this is that my general opinion has been that a lot of the roadway improvements that the applicant has proposed, particularly at the sidewalks, the crossing lights, and the intersection at Powder Mill and Waltham, could potentially be counted towards, could be in lieu of the safe harbor provision.
That's correct.
And I believe that's the heart of what the applicant is asking planning board for planning board feedback on. Adam,
Yeah,
Chris?
that's accurate. Yeah. And I'm happy to pull up that Excel sheet that Adam provided to the board.
Just for at home, anybody who's this is the intersection of Waltham Street and Powder Mill Road, which is in poor condition and is not ADA accessible.
I can share my screen because I have that document loaded here.
Okay, you've got the co-host permission, Adam.
You guys see this? Do you see the sheet?
Would you mind zooming in a little bit?
That better?
Yeah.
So we just put together some of the costs for what we were just talking about and what came up in the traffic or work. Basically paving, sidewalks, ADA compliant, the sidewalk headlights to control pedestrians crossing through the sidewalk there. So we got estimates. These are real estimates from one of them from Lazaro Paving and Suffolk Engineering for the sidewalks and concrete curbing repair and the installation of the ADA compliant sidewalks and new lighting controls. Police details, we put that in there. So I just wanted to show the amount of money that is being spent there. And I also wanted to mention, and I'm pretty sure everyone's well aware of the extent of the cleanup we've had to do on site because of the contamination of buried oil tanks and different types of fill that's been put on site that we have started the process of and are working to get completed to get the site cleaned up. To date, we've spent about $145,000 for that. And we just got an additional work change order for $82,000. So as a group, you know, we're looking at close to $400,000 with, you know, work on site and work in the intersection to improve that whole area. And I'm not asking for credit for all of that. Obviously, I just wanted to put that number there. If you go to the other column here, I'll show that I would be asking for 100% credit for the paving. That's going to be in the road work that's not directly related to our site, but will need to be done for the repairs to the intersections. And then I'm only asking for $20,000 or 33% of what it's going to cost to replace the sidewalks from the bridge basically to our abutters property. I feel that anything in front of Waltham Street property and Powder Mill property, we're going to own as builders, we're going to own as the project, but anything that's in front of the comic book shop, you know, we're really taking a risk because we don't own that property and we have to now upgrade what's there, what's under it. So I'm asking for credit for the work in front of the comic book shop, which is, I think $20,000 is going to be low, but that's what I'm asking for. And then for the compliant sidewalks and lighting, I'm asking for 100% credit towards that. And that gets me to about $141,000 just with that work that's going to be done in the intersection and on the sidewalk. So there's a difference of about $38,000 to get to our calculation of 179,000, which is our bonus unit number. This is what we are required to put back to the Community Preservation Fund. So I'm also asking for 26% of what we've already paid, and this is not from the landowner or escrow account or anything like that. This is out of pocket applicant expenses to start cleaning up this site. 26% to 38,000 is not much from what the 250 it's going to cost to do it. So I'm hoping to show you, you know, these numbers here that, you know, get us to that number. We're there, we're spending that money. And then I also believe that the pedestrian walkway that we're doing from Waltham Street behind the building with the bike racks, connecting it back to Powder Mill is a positive that I'm not asking for credit for, but is giving, I would say, giving back to open space, because now we can take, you know, pedestrians that maybe want to go down by the river and then not have to walk on the corner, get down to Powder Mill. I think there's a lot of improvements that are going to be happening in that corner from this project. So I wanted to put it on paper and put it out there for you to look at.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
I would ask board members not to focus so much on the dollar amounts. These will get confirmed by, you know, essentially peer review in the same sense. But what I would ask if board members consider feedback to the applicant regarding the scope items. And I'll just add that the ADA compliant sidewalk light with install, as we discussed previously with DPW, would include pedestrian signals on all four corners. And Adam, please confirm after I'm done, but pedestrian signaling on all four corners for crosswalks, new ADA compliant ramps on all four corners. Did I get that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then let's see, I'm not sure we'll be able to count the police details just based on the regs that I review, but you have to take another look at that. But I would ask board members if you have any feedback for the applicant regarding the scope and your view on how it complies with the open safe harbor positions.
So, Chris, I think there's an issue with mixing the open space recreation requirements for the extra, 14 units with the overall DOD special permit requirement for pedestrian enhancements. I mean, the thing I see here easily hits the DOD button for the special permit and pedestrian enhancements in the downtown, improving the downtown pedestrian experience. But I'm having a hard time relating any of them to the open space recreation requirement for the extra units. Now, we did most recently add a thing saying it could be open space, it could be recreation, and then we added or accessibility to get to that open space and recreation. But that's a little stretch there, that this stuff, it meets that requirement. So I don't know, I'm having a hard time seeing how this applies to the DOD extra bonus unit requirement versus the overall DOD special permit requirement.
And your perspective is, you're saying it doesn't tie to open space, essentially. Is that the heart of?
Yeah, open space and rec.
Rec, yeah.
And,
I mean,
you know,
I do see now.
put in something for the accessibility stuff, and you know, maybe we could interpret it that way. It's just a little awkward.
So yeah,
Would you like to
and-
bring that up? I have that ready to share, Mr. Chair, if it would help.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's up to the applicant, I think, but I'm happy to allow it.
Sure.
And while we wait, do other board members have perspective on this?
I mean, overall, this is hitting a lot of the priorities that I think that a lot of us have focused on from the beginning, especially those pedestrian signals.
So I think if you could see my screen, I think. This is starting from the top here. Well, stop. We go into developers responsible. This is the responsibility for the open space. And I think what the board's dealing with here, you know, is pretty much addressed here. I guess the what Bill's saying, I can understand to a point where he's saying, you know, that it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't directly remove a barrier to open space, but I would argue that in this case, it's important to consider that people who are unable to utilize that crosswalk now because it's not ADA compliant are unable to reach a lot of open space that may be available. So that would be, and this specifically calls out you know, the types of things that are there. So I guess the board would have to determine, you know, if it is removing a barrier to the use of the town's open space. I think we all know about some of the crossing difficulties that have been, we've all documented there and over the past couple of years, and specifically since this project has started. But
so this allows for 3 different or provisions in a sense. So the first, if you scroll up just a little bit, Bill, again.
Yeah.
The first is acquisition of such open space, which essentially would be donated to the town. Second
Right.
is the acquisition, creation, preservation, rehabilitation, etc. Of land or facilities for recreation. And third, the provision, funding for the planning, design, and construction of accessible ramps, audio signal crossings, or other improvements needed to remove barriers to entry or use of the town of Maynard's open space or recreation lands by those with disabilities. So as I understand it, the applicant is, and Adam, are you claiming this third item is how you meet the intent of the open space bylaw here?
I would say the third item, and I'd also notate that this language is only in the DOD, and we all know what the DOD area is. So I think that we're very much fit into what the purpose and the intent of the bylaw is in creating the downtown area to be a more walkable place, to have access to the Assabet River. I think it isn't a stretch. I think 3 is exactly what the intent and purpose of the bylaw is looking for.
Well, I would correct that interpretation. The intent and purpose of the open space recreation is it could provide funding for anywhere in town to have this stuff happen. The separate provision of the special permit criteria specific to the DOD or talks to your issue of improving the pedestrian experience in the downtown.
Well, I think it is designed to be very flexible though in the interpretation, but that's, you know,
Well, I will say, just a quick correction, it's not just a donation, because it does say back at the bottom of this, in place of some or all monetary donation, the developer may provide materials and construction services of value approved. So I still think that, all that said, I still think it's a judgment on whether, what does the determination of open space mean? And every board member is allowed their own sort of view on that. So I'm asking board members if you have additional feedback to the applicant on how they, you know, regarding their proposal on this. And Bill Nemser, in the past, have we, as I recall, we've tried to set out the bones of DAs or development agreements prior to closing hearings, but not necessarily always have a DA signed, because it also includes select board input, correct?
that's correct. Typically, we want to get the basics agreed to. And in this case, a lot of the, you know, like, for example, the number of units, affordable, you know, we haven't discussed really affordable at all with this. But we'd like to get all that at least well underway so that the board has an idea of what their, you know, what their constraints or barriers may be when they're considering the application. This unit or this project does have a number of affordable units, which will bring us over. I believe we'll be able to be over our 10%, put us in safe harbor. I should have mentioned that in the beginning. I neglected to.
So overall, then I could probably read this a few different ways. And in one of those versions, how I could read it, I would agree with how Bill Crenshaw laid it out, that it should be tied specifically to some type of open space. My perspective on this particular proposal that would be a substantial improvement to accessing the downtown. And for me, that solidifies that I think it does meet the intent of this. In this case, I consider the concept of open space to allow for downtown open spaces as well. And I think that it removes a barrier to entry to the downtown for the neighborhoods that are adjacent to this intersection. But that's just my own perspective on this.
It obviously puts us in an awkward position if we're planning to do all these upgrades to common infrastructure on top of providing another another donation to the full amount. So just noting that.
So I'm satisfied, unless there's other comments from the board on this.
Chris, just
Yeah.
two comments. One is, thinking about it, connectivity to Memorial Park and the events that happen there wouldn't be bad, but that would imply pedestrian improvements at the other intersection closer to the fire station. And I would also point out that it's not mandatory that the safe harbor amount be met. So the
I'm not,
amount,
what does that mean? Sorry.
well, the safe harbor is just safe harbor. It's like, oh yeah, that's enough, definitely. But the planning board has the right to determine the amount that is enough. And theoretically, it could be a minimal amount. But we'd all have to agree on that. That's all. So, you know, it doesn't have to be $162,000. It could be $82,000. I don't know, something. But if the planning board agrees on that. But if they came in with 162 grand, then we'd be like, yep, that's it. That's good. Check that box.
Right, and this is why I allow the applicant to drive the proposal, so that they're in control of what the proposal is and what the application is overall. And this is what the applicant is presenting as I believe their strongest case. And I think it's up to us to, determine if that's what it is.
Yeah, and my preference is it just be split out. So whatever they come up with, it's like, this is for the bonus units. And this other stuff is for the DOD special permit. I don't want them mixed up together because at some point we'll have to cite them in a decision.
Bill Nemser, did you catch that?
I did. I don't have an answer at the moment exactly how to split that up, but I understand it. Makes sense. And I think it could be done.
So all that, Mr. Alphen and Mr. Stack, it's at this point, you can continue on with your presentation, or I will open it up for public comment.
I think you can proceed with public comment.
So regarding public comment, we allow up to 3 minutes of comments from each member of the public. If you could, please use the raise hand feature, and I will call on you each individually. If you're having trouble with that, please activate your video screen and wave your hand, and we can try to see that as well as a raise hand. So now I will open up for public comment. First comment I see is from Leslie Bryant. Please, Leslie, give me a second. Okay, you may unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, in terms of the lighting, I know there was a lot of discussion about light trespassing onto the neighbors and also onto the riverbank. And, I'm glad to hear that you're trying to mitigate the trespass in both those directions, especially since there's known to be wildlife, mammal wildlife living in that section of the river. I was just wondering if all the outdoor lighting that's not being covered, like the outdoor parking area, for instance, are all of the bulbs going to be warm toned in compliance with dark sky regulations?
So I will, at the end of public comment, I'll turn it back over to clarify a few things, Leslie.
Okay.
I just don't want to take time one at a time if you understand that. Did you have further comments?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. Other comments? And Bill, if you could help me see if there's others. I see Mr. Thomas Herbst. Please go ahead, Thomas.
Hi. Hi, my name is Thomas Herbst. I live at 8 Potter Mill Road, abutting this particular project. I have multiple concerns which I put in writing to the board, which I believe are being somewhat addressed. There are some additional concerns that I have. One of them being the actual, again, getting back to the lighting. I don't understand how the lighting can actually eliminate completely the lighting between the properties. The other concern that I have is actually when there's heavy rain, there's actually a large overflow of water that could enter both multiple properties. And I believe by putting an additional drain for the street, it will alleviate that. A lot of the water comes off of Waltham Street, crosses over to Potter Mill, and then crosses over and then goes into the parking lot, the existing parking lot, which that's what causes the overflow of the parking lot. I don't think that's going to be alleviated, and I don't think that was addressed at any of the meetings. And I think that should be addressed, A, by the DPW, so that they can review and make recommendations for an additional drain should it be needed. My opinion, based upon my observation, an additional drain would help to alleviate that issue. My last concern, which the wall between the two properties, in my opinion, is actually too high. I would recommend lowering the parking lot and the actual retaining wall. That would be my recommendations. My last and final concern in relation to you did put up some shadow casting images up, but I did some calculations, and the calculations that I have from October to March 1st, I'm losing approximately 20 to 30% of the lighting in that particular time frame. So on my solar panel, so it's basically a monetary loss. So those are my concerns, and I would that would be, again, the concerns that I have in addition to the letter that I did send over. So that would be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Herbst. Other public comments, please?
I don't see any other hands, Mr. Chair.
I'll leave public comment open for another minute in case there are others. Procedurally or process-wise, Bill, we also have Conservation Commission that has some jurisdiction here as well. And we have discussed with the CONSCOM that we will defer stormwater, and there's a couple questions earlier too during site plan about stormwater drains and stuff like that. Those get deferred to CONSCOM in this particular case, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and the board heard those comments. Any feedback from the board members regarding the comments that were heard? I advise all applicants to work diligently with abutters, and I believe that has been occurring here. I won't speak for anyone, but it's just my general advice. And then I believe there's a question regarding warm tone lighting from Leslie, and I believe that was covered and confirmed during peer review. So it was an item in peer review that was checked off as confirmed previously. So I'll turn it back over to Mr. Alphen. You started with your introduction of requesting, noting that you would be requesting a special permit today, I believe. Would you like to clarify what your request is for the board today?
Well, we would like to hear the board's general opinion about the project and where we're heading. Believe it or not, I'm sure you hear it all the time, but time is of the essence. And, we understand that there may be some outstanding items that the board would like to hear about, but we would like to maybe have a straw poll so we have an idea of how quickly we can get this done.
Bill Nemser, there's essentially two votes, correct, for planning board? One would be special permit, one would be site plan review. Did I get that correct?
Yes, yes, there's just be special permit and a site plan review. The special permit is going to encompass both the permission for the project under DOD, but the parking reduction request, and the site plan is site plan.
And I'll ask the board in a minute, but my general perspective on site plan is that there's been a vast reduction of peer review comments and board comments. I think there's maybe a handful pending that have been discussed tonight. I generally view the site plan as very close. Does the rest of the board have any feedback on site plan and generally speaking?
Chris?
Yes.
I'm still dissatisfied with the recycling rubbish area.
Yes, that's noted, Jim. I believe the applicant needs to provide additional information on that, on how they're going to manage it.
Personally, I'm not willing to submit to a straw poll, but overall, the state of the site plan looks positive to me, especially if the remaining concerns such as the trash recycling, the lighting concerns about timing, and Leslie's point about the remaining dark sky guidelines and similar things are addressed.
Annette or Bill, do you have any feedback on site plan?
No, I don't.
No, nothing additional.
So one thing for site plan, we're just going to need to see all peer review items closed out. That's just something procedurally that has to occur. And I think you have good guidance from the board. I don't see, as proposed, I don't see site plan as a barrier towards any additional approval, generally speaking.
Thank you.
Besides items obviously discussed tonight.
Yep.
Special permit requires us to look at the downtown overlay district special permit criteria, along with the general special permit criteria. The general special permit criteria is in 10.6 or 10.4, and that just says we shall determine in consideration the following: social, economic, and community needs, traffic flow and safety, adequacy of utilities, neighborhood characteristics, impact of natural environment, potential fiscal impacts. My thought on general special permit is you meet the criteria for general special permit. That's the lower bar. The higher bar is the DOD special permit. Does the board generally agree with that statement I just made?
No.
Bill, I see you kind of shaking your head.
I wasn't shaking. I was just thinking. That's
Yeah.
the way I tilt when I think. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
And so, and I'm just trying to hone in on this, right? So the 10.4 special permit criteria, that's the low bar. My general sense is that has been met. So it's the 9.4.6, which is the following. The proposal will include the functioning of the downtown, will improve the functioning of the downtown by at least one of the following means. It will provide a significant improvement to the usage or number of parking spaces, public parking spaces, which I don't believe that meets this criteria, but it's only one of the following. Second, provide a significant improvement to the effectiveness of parking spaces, allocation of the downtown. I don't think it I don't think this proposal is trying to address that. Third, provide a significant improvement to the pedestrian experience in the downtown. I think that's up for the board to decide. 4, provide a significant improvement to the water quality of the current stormwater runoff. 5, increase views and access of the Assabet River. 6, provide a significant improvement to the functioning of the downtown area. And so this will tie back to Bill Crenshaw's request earlier, is that what specifically are the pedestrian improvements to the pedestrian experience? And Bill Nemser, would you like to add anything to that? You're on mute, Bill.
I think you've pretty much covered that. The like you said, the bar is higher for the DoD special permit, but I think that you covered it, and that the project is generally, is in good position to meet the requirements for that. The special permits, I mean, what the special permits are for is to allow multifamily structure in the downtown overlay district, and to allow the requested parking relief. So that's in the end what we're looking for with a special permit. We have considerations, which you have an additional set of considerations with the DoD, but in general, what the board is evaluating is basically does the good outweigh the bad? Does the benefits outweigh any detrimental or adverse effects? And that's the purpose of the special permit. The considerations are just that, considerations. There's additional requirements with the DoD that are spelled out concerning the topics already discussed, such as walkability or access, and visual appeal, and so on. But I think that pretty much covers it. You did a good job with it, Chris.
Any board feedback on the DoD special permit criteria for the applicant? Okay. Bill Nemser, what now?
The board, well, we have a number of items that are outstanding. And we also, they're all what I would consider, typical types of items that this team is clearly experienced and clearly understands exactly what is required. I had only one question that I was unclear about going forward, and I think we can clear that up very easily in a moment. There's right now the development agreement team would the development agreement could be conditioned, but it is a requirement that it to obtain this and utilize a special permit, a development agreement would have to be executed. But that could be done, that could be conditioned as part of the permit if the board was comfortable. There's also, we have another hearing in 2 weeks, another meeting in 2 weeks, where if the board opted to continue, I'm sure the applicant will tell us if that would be is something that would be doable to get all these materials by then, or get all the updates. I'm not sure the traffic, looking at the traffic, there was we're expecting some stuff, but I didn't have a timeline when that would be done, and I thought that would be that would probably factor in here. Mr. Dirk would probably have oh, there he is. Good.
Yeah, thank you. We expect to have that done this week. In fact, the draft of the report has been prepared and we're currently reviewing it. So I would say at the latest, it'll be submitted by early next week.
So, Jim Thorne, not Jim Thorpe, Jim Thorne. Jim, with those timeframes and understanding the revisions that the board has requested, I'm looking, they're like I said, I would consider them pretty typical. Is it feasible that these they're gonna have to be reviewed one way or the other, when it's submitted, whether it's conditioned or whether it's just part of the new plan? Do you see that would allow for time to review Mr. Dirk's report and before the next meeting, or is it something you feel that we would need that the board shouldn't condition, or is there anything misgivings?
Let me ask a question a different way. Jim, when do you need information to be able to complete this by the end of next week, your review?
To complete by the end of next week.
Yeah, Friday of the next week, so that I have time, OMS has time to review what you do.
Ideally, it'd be good to have it by the end of this week, so that we can start a review beginning of next week. But if you need until Monday, I think we could still accommodate. If we could submit it on Monday, we could get it reviewed by Friday. We're gonna review it as fast as we can, so.
And to confirm, I'm only asking items to be reviewed regarding open pending items. I'm not asking obviously for another comb over, and I'm not asking for a page turn, just items that are still pending. Okay.
Right, yep.
Mr. Chairman, we'll make a commitment to deliver the traffic study by this Friday. I'll make that commitment.
So Mr. Alphen, it's back to you and how you would like to proceed.
It sounds to me that maybe what we can do is, if it's all right with you, Mr. Chairman, is potentially get a working draft decision moving in the interim and continue for 2 weeks, unless you feel the board is comfortable making a vote tonight based on these outstanding issues becoming conditions.
I have one question, if I can, to that, to kind of see which direction this goes tonight. And I think, Chris, you did mention this earlier. If we have traffic concerns, if we have landscape lighting concerns and recycling, trash removal concerns, which will all be closed out by peer review, I guess, is that going to change the board's mind? Because the peer review is actually going to say, yes, they comply, it's closed out. So I don't know what would change tonight or in 2 weeks, besides, a check mark on that. And obviously we have to get that information done. If I said that right.
That I think I get the gist of it.
Yeah.
I'll give an example. We would, and I'm not counting this a major or minor example, it's just an example. The board would like to see how both trash and recycling is going to be managed in that particular area. And I don't know if the board will consider whatever's proposed to be satisfactory or not. So it's there's peer review items that need to be closed out, and there's a few items that I believe needs just the board to say yes on. We could talk about conditioning it for a vote. I would suggest, though, that may be risky, because then we would be closing the hearing. And once we close the hearing, there's no additional information that will be allowed to be submitted. And board members will vote how they choose at that point. So the applicant's welcome to request that. And I know, Adam, you have a time sensitivity here, and I'm cognizant of that as well. But public meeting requires us to close hearings and then take votes, and then no additional information will be allowed to be entered. Mr. Alphen, can you help clarify if I get it?
Yeah, That's accurate. It's sort of awkward on Zoom because I only represent my client. Adam, is it okay to continue?
It sounds like it.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I would ask that we have the opportunity to potentially look at a draft decision in the meantime, so that at the next hearing in 2 weeks, there may be a draft decision that we can review.
I would strongly advise all applicants, particularly this one, to work with town staff to prepare a draft decision that lists out conditions and any other requests.
Terrific.
And what my expectation is that draft would be finalized and ready for board review, even prior to the next hearing.
Very good.
And then we can further discuss in the hearing itself, but I would like to have board members aware of what that draft proposed decision would look like ahead of time.
Sure.
Best way to do that, to get it be efficient but be complete, is I can go and get started on my end for the basic stuff. But I think if Attorney Alphen was got with his client and they drafted up what they thought were conditions and submitted to me, I can get the other stuff going in the meantime, and then we can make the sausage, And
we've drafted a decision before, so
yeah, I've done one. It's and if we have obviously the DA, the development agreement is a separate conversation that can.
Yep.
I assume that's going to go on its own, and Steve's leading that effort with that. But
so my final parting comment as chair is that I think this project is very close to meeting the requirements of site plan and the special permits in 10.6 and 9.4.6. I think the crux of the final sort of review of planning board is, what is justifying how this project will meet the special permit criteria for 9.4.6. And what I've found before, Mr. Alphen, is a one paragraph description or whatever length of description you determine is best, but a short description just spelling out how 9.4.6 is met.
Understood.
And I think that's, if you ask me what the last thing for a primary focus, that would be it.
Understood.
But I don't see any other primary focus here. I think it's just laying that out. And I'm not saying it's justified or not. I think the project has a lot of great merit. I think it's just putting it on paper and just showing it. That's all.
Yep. Understood. Thank you.
On the 28th, on the 27th, Mr. Chair, it looks like we don't have anything else on the agenda, so that would be better.
I would allow a continuation to that. If for some reason the applicant wanted to try to continue earlier, the board could discuss that as well. But we could continue to the 27th.
I have one point of clarification I'd like to before you adjourn or before you consider this, Mr. Chair, if I may. I had one of my notes I'm looking at on this one regarding, I think it was Bill had made it Bill Cronshaw, and I didn't, somehow I'm not sure if it was clear. I thought about lighting on the sidewalk, but I didn't get all of that about from the project. And I'm looking at my notes and I have half of it. Can you clarify what you were talking about with that? With the
me, Bill? Yeah, so I just asked if there was lighting under the canopies along the sidewalk, and
okay.
It just hadn't been shown on the photometrics yet.
Okay, all right. Got it. But that's okay, just to add it to the photometric. Okay, sorry about that. Thanks.
All right. And Bill, just one other thing I haven't heard mentioned here is I'm still extremely interested in the street level facade treatment on Waltham Street and how we're going to obscure that emergency exit.
Yeah, it's on my notes there. That I think the applicant understands that one. I mean, it's some, we discussed on that about a roll up or a that would camouflage the vehicles storage there in the garage.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that I think that could be done. You know, it sounds like you guys all had an idea about that, but certainly an independent exhibit that explained that. If you get that done, send it over to me. I can get it to the fire chief lickety split, and we can see. You know, it shouldn't be
Sure.
hard to get over to her. But if you just get me something that you understand what Mr. Crownshaw is asking for, but it's aesthetics.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, understood. Makes sense to us.
Mr. Alphen, how would you and your client prefer to proceed? A continuance to the 27th?
I think
I
to the
also said, I also
27th.
said that an earlier date could be considered by the board as well.
Just seeing how these things typically go, I think 2 weeks is a good time for continuance.
If you wanted a sidebar with your client, I'm happy to allow it to.
Sure, if you don't mind, just give them a call real quick.
Yeah, please. We'll take a 3-minute recess.
That's good.
Ready for folks to come?
No, they were on a 3-minute break. Still going.
All right, give me a ring when you're ready. For your
I'll
folks to
wait.
come.
I'll wait.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
Pardon me, one sec. I'll reopen.
Yeah.
Jim, what's the terminology here? We'll rejoin the meeting?
Rejoin.
Thank you.
Reconvene.
I'll rejoin and reconvene the meeting. That satisfies both of you.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it. I think if it's okay with you and the rest of the board, we'd appreciate a continuance for 2 weeks so that we meet on the 27th with a draft decision and confirmation that all the outstanding items are completed and to the board's satisfaction. I think we don't want to rush this. We want to make sure that this is done correctly. But with also knowing that we need to get a decision as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Alphen. I don't see any impediments to having a closure and decision on the 27th.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll make a motion to continue to February 27th at 7 p.m.
I'll second that.
Since this is a virtual meeting, we'll have to vote by roll call. Jim,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Annette,
Yes,
Natalie,
Yes.
and I vote yes. That's 5-0 to continue to the 27th of February. Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman,
Yes, Jim.
I would make a motion that we adjourn this meeting until that time.
Can you make that motion then, Jim, please?
Yes, I would suggest that we adjourn this meeting until the time and place that you just spoke about.
Yep. Procedurally, I don't quite understand it, but I trust your judgment, Jim.
Point of order, Chris?
Yes, yeah.
We have 2 other hearings tonight.
Yeah.
I don't think Jim is requesting to.
I'm sorry, I should have said adjourn this hearing.
All right, I'll second the motion to adjourn the hearing at this time. All in favor by roll call, Jim,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
and Annette,
yes.
Natalie,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Thank you to all who participated tonight. Very really appreciate all the professional services completed here. Thank you to all board members.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. I'm cognizant that it's 9:50. And can we continue the next 2 items, Bill, to the next meeting, or would you? I don't want this to go to 10:30 if we can avoid it.
I understand. Let me just, I would prefer to get a vote tonight if I could. Here's what has occurred since the last meeting.
Then let me open up item 3, public hearing for the zoning text amendment, firearms, businesses and shooting ranges and associated definitions. Please go ahead.
Okay, basically, we had gone through the changes proposed for the regulation of firearms businesses and shooting ranges. We'd gone over the definitions. We'd amended the section to address it. One thing that was not done, and it actually had been, and I somehow missed it, but it was a question of a use table, which is simply exactly what it sounded like, the use table. That was advertised and has gone through the process. And as I understood it, the board's only hesitation with the previous draft zoning bylaw was the absence of the use table, indicating that shooting ranges, I'll bring it, let me share it here. Shooting ranges indoor would be permitted by special permit in certain locations. Outdoor would be listed only to be prohibited. And firearms businesses also would be regulated to the business districts. This should show you.
So
I
Bill,
think you're getting into the wrong public hearing.
yeah, so that's what I was going to say. They're connected. They're connected. It's just listed on the agenda. The table is the next public hearing, which we haven't opened yet. Can I open 2 public hearings at the same time so we can discuss both?
No, but this is directly related to the previous one. And so what I would say is that the initial public hearing for firearms bylaws this was the holdup as I understood it. So with that, I can bring up what we have for the definitions, which included light manufacturing, the new section, and the definitions, if the firearms definitions as well. So would you like me to bring anything up, or I don't know how the board would prefer?
I don't have any advice. I'm pretty fried right now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, Chris, I mean, from my review of the updated firearm zoning bylaw definitions in section 7.2, et cetera, it looks like all of the comments from the prior part of this hearing a couple weeks ago have been addressed.
yeah, we had some really good, you guys had really good input, and it was in there. There was no input as far as I know or the other.
Yeah, I noticed. I saw that too. I mean, I don't need to go through it all again.
Okay.
If board members would like to see the changes, we can go through it.
All right. Well, whatever. So for firearms, the first hearing, would be, yeah. Let's go mine. Stop. Oh, I don't know. I'm gonna crash. Regardless, bear with me. Sorry, there I got my share screen open. That's would be okay. Share. Stop it. Okay, did that stop? Did that stop share? I'm getting a lot of problems. Something's going crazy on the computer here.
We're
I guess.
seeing- Oh, now we see it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there we go. So. Oh my goodness, what happened here? Bear with me, folks. I just lost my whole.
Do board members need to review the individual changes? They were sent out. Does anyone have any questions on them?
I reviewed them.
I reviewed them. I'm all set, but if somebody needs them, I can bring them up. I have them on screen. I can bring them up if need be.
Does Annette or Jim, do you need to see the changes?
No,
okay.
I understand.
The board has already reviewed all the changes, Bill. We don't need to see them.
Okay. So I apologize for that.
What I will do is I'll open this up for public comment. If there's any public comments on the zoning text amendment for firearms businesses and shooting ranges, we'll take public comments on that zoning right now. I'll leave public comment open. What's next, Bill? What do we have to do with this?
We need to.
I'm sorry, excuse me. How does one ask to be able to speak?
Oh, well, you just did. So is it
Okay.
Lisa Dunn?
Yes, I do have
Yes.
a question.
Please go ahead.
The emphasis on this seems to be the shooting ranges. Where exactly in the town are you proposing to allow an indoor shooting range? The specific areas of town?
A good question. Bill Nemser, can you cover the zoning districts that will be not
Yes.
allowed through special permit?
Yeah, I just shut it off. Let me get it back up there. That was yeah.
Here, I'll see if I can pull it up too, Bill.
Yeah, if you could pull it up, Chris. Something's happened with my computer. I was having problems earlier, but I'm unable to get. I don't know exactly what it is, but it would be a help if you could. I'm having some issues getting in it. But in general, Lisa, while Chris is pulling that up, it would be allowed by special permit in the central business district, the business district, and industrial district, and I believe in the healthcare industrial, which is the mill. Now, they're all indoor ranges, and it would be by special permit of the planning board. It mirrors the same locations, incidentally, that we're proposing for firearms businesses. So right now, the big problem that we had when we started this initiative with firearms is that we didn't regulate firearms in our zoning bylaws, nor did we regulate shooting ranges. So consequently, if a business did come in, it would be, if it was a business like a dealer, it would likely fall under retail and be allowed anywhere retail was, and kind of lumped in with all of the retail. The board felt that that was not something they wanted. They wanted to have a separate category for firearms businesses. Likewise, shooting ranges, we didn't originally even think about when we started this initiative about a year ago, I guess, because we do have one shooting range in town that's existing at the Rod and Gun Club, and that's indoor and outdoor. But the thought was, well, we should regulate those by, thank you, Chris. I'm sorry about my technological catastrophe there. But we didn't want to regulate shooting ranges like we would regulate any recreational use, and that's what they would have fallen under. So if you now, can you see that? Can everybody see? Lisa, can you see that?
So central business you would refer to as where basically the downtown.
That's
district.
correct. So that would be, we're proposing that rather than being allowed by right as a retail currently, right now, if we didn't do anything, somebody came in, a retail would be allowed by right. It would, a gun store could be allowed as by right. This allows for individual review of it. But those are the four areas that it's proposed to go into.
Is there any sort of proposal to simply prohibit them from being in the downtown business area?
It was
Bill, I'll take that one. So currently now we don't have any zoning regarding where firearms establishments could set up shop. It's kind of a hole in the zoning itself. There's just no zoning around it at all. This effort has not been part of any discussion about eliminating the ability for a firearm shop to establish itself in town. We are simply zoning similar to how we may zone other sort of businesses, but also considerate of the characteristic of the business itself. We're doing it just how we would do any other type of zoning. That's how this has proceeded.
Okay.
I'll recognize Linda Thayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you for addressing this. I recognize the importance of the amendment, and I appreciate that you're being proactive to address it. But I do have a similar question to Lisa's, and I guess I should say I'm located 14 Chandler Street. I think I'm supposed to do that. But it appears that it's allowed now, or what you're proposing is that it be allowed in all but the residential areas or zones. And I do wonder if there was any consideration to not put it not include all the business districts, mainly the central business district. Did the board discuss, how did you arrive, I guess, at how you propose the zones?
We,
Yeah, we arrived at that through the subcommittee that prepared this draft of the zoning bylaw. So yeah, that's how we arrived at that. There was, I don't recall exactly the discussion, but I don't recall if there was any discussion about just limiting it to the central business district. Bill, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I think we actually did, because the issue came about indoor ranges and things like that. Part of the concern when crafting this bylaw, we had a member of the planning board, a member of the zoning board, and the locations as well as the definitions and the overall creation of section 7.2 was done in collaboration with, in this case, the local institution of the Rod and Gun Club. We wanted to ensure that we've had a lot of concern about their uses being affected, which they're not by this particular bylaw. But the issue of the downtown and the downtown overlay district did come up quite a bit, and it was what you're asking about is a lot of people did, that you and Lisa brought up, and in the end, I thought we came to the conclusion that it makes more sense having special permit allows for a level of control, but also does not entirely prohibit the use in the downtown. So things that were, we were considered, the things that we were considering were, and we're trying to be, act in down the middle in the best interest of the town, were like, what are we saying? Are we saying, is it a bad thing for somebody to see or to see that a gun shop is located in the downtown or not? These things all were, discussed, and there definitely a lot went into it. And
Did he freeze or did I freeze?
I think Bill froze.
Oh.
I was wondering the same thing. So Linda, what's helpful for the board is to gain better perspective on this. So if you have, a perspective that the board should hear about not including it in some districts, I think I would like to hear that, right? Because that helps us with our deliberation.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm not sure I can articulate it very clearly at this time because it's so late. It's so late. There are several levels. One is so I think it's important to allow it in the business district. So I want to be clear that I'm not saying I don't think it should be in the business district. I think it's reasonable and fair to allow that. The district is long. It will be, the business district expands from I think the beginning of Powder Mill Road, Powder Mill Road corridor from Acton down to 62. Is that right, Bill?
yes, I got
Bill. Oh, there you are.
I'm back on. Sorry about that.
So there's a pretty broad expanse of business district that it covers. I personally feel that there are limited spaces in the central business district, and I guess we seem to finally have gained some momentum with businesses wanting to come into town. And again, I don't want to be misunderstood in saying that this would prevent businesses from coming in. It's just there's only so much real estate to go around. That's, I think, my primary thing. And I will piggyback on that you know what, I'm going to leave it at that because again, it's late and I don't want to be misunderstood. So yeah, I guess I would like to understand better how what the subcommittee discussed when they were discussing it.
If I may, I think I can add some color to my concerns, if that would be allowed.
I will, yes, since I will allow you to provide your perspective. And so, yes, please go ahead.
So my perspective is twofold, part of which comes from the fact that I am actually a registered gun owner. And I recognize that if a firearms related business or a manufacturing wanted to come into the mill, for example, that might be a boon to the town. It might be a valuable thing to have in the town. I am not sure that a firearms business would be a detriment to anyone if we're talking about selling firearms downtown. But the idea of an indoor shooting range where there is live fire in a downtown business area, to me, is very problematic in terms of safety, in terms of noise level, in terms of it simply being, I believe, a detriment to some of the populace. If you've ever been to an indoor shooting range or around one, even from the outside, they are loud. You can hear firearms being fired. And I could imagine that even triggering someone's PTSD, quite possibly. There's a reason why shooting ranges are normally in more industrial spaces and in spaces where there's not a lot of congested business sites. And we are a small town and most of our business sites are fairly congested. So my personal feelings is that shooting ranges in these business areas should be prohibited. I feel very strongly about that. Because I'm, involved in the cultural district, could I say I love the idea of a firearm shop downtown? Would it be not a great mix for our town? Possibly, but I temper my opinion on that with what may appeal to the public. So for me, I'm simply drawing the line at the shooting range. I just don't like the idea of it at all.
Thank you, Lisa. I think that's great perspective. And thank you, Linda, as well. Great perspective from both. So, I'm seeing more hands. I'll recognize Jenna Dargy, I hope I got that name correct.
Dargy, but very close. Thank you. A very quick comment. For me, I see the Central Business District as businesses that rely heavily on foot traffic. And I think typically firearms related businesses are ones that ideally shouldn't be people just walking by and thinking, hey, I'll stop in, and not as reliant on foot traffic as others in the Central Business District would. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Linda. Yes.
Thank you. I will be brief. I don't know how I missed this, but I didn't realize the indoor shooting range is proposed in the Central Business District as well. So I have to, I will say, I echo a lot of what Lisa's concerns are. I think it's a congested area. I also am concerned with the special permit process where you have to make a strong case as to why it shouldn't be there. Or why to deny, I'm sorry, if you wanted to deny it, you need to make a strong case. And I think not putting it in the very dense Central Business District, and I'm talking now shooting range, specifically shooting range, is definitely something for you folks to please reconsider. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Other public comments? I'm not seeing any. Okay, back to the board. Any further feedback from the board on particularly the text of the zoning bylaw? Bill, does the text explicitly point out what zones it'll be allowed, or is that only in the table?
No, I believe that does point it out in here. Unfortunately, like I said, my computer, I'm glad you came to the rescue here because my computer is just like dying. It threw me off. But if you could scoot up a little bit, I think it tells you the rate. There we go. And slide it down a little bit. It shows you, I think, let's see, a little more. Maybe it was at the top and we missed it there. I'm sure it did, but it's in at the top, I think, where it says. Yeah, they're under very 721. So it doesn't specifically call out everything, but it does in general say for commercial and business districts quality. And let's see. I wish I'd pull this up online.
Oh, here. Here's my favorite feature, which is search.
Yeah.
There's no reference to central business in this
Okay,
text.
so maybe it's not in there. Okay. Maybe it just said the commercial areas. So, okay. All right, so then that one, then 7.2.
As I recall, we just referenced the table, and the table is the only place where it demonstrates what zoning districts where it's allowed by special permit. Right.
Yeah, it looks like yeah. So I would say 7.2, both of what Lisa and Linda were talking about does not because what it talks about, I knew that it said commercial business districts, but it's saying to protect the quality of it. So this would be if the board chose to vote on 7.2, it'd be what you're doing. You're not voting on the bylaw. You're voting on recommendation of the bylaw to the town meeting. So if the board was comfortable with this particular, we're going to be voting on 3 other, at least, that would not specifically designate the zoning districts.
The next hearing we open has the table included, which includes the zoning districts.
Definitions should be next, isn't it? I think definitions is next.
Well, if I look at the agenda.
No, but there's several items in this first.
Oh, sure, I understand.
So that's Chris, a comment about the wording of the zoning in section 7.2.8 in particular. I wouldn't mind if subsection B was clarified to include noise impacts. I mean, I kind of interpret economic impacts with that, but it wouldn't be bad to, go adverse visual, noise, or economic impacts.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, wait a minute, Bill. I'm going to do it right now. We got it. If I can do it on my. That's 7.2.8.B.
7.2.8.1B. It's a special permit criteria. It has to meet all 3.
The one I have highlighted, correct?
Nothing's displaying.
Oh, sorry, I'm not sharing. Here I am thinking y'all are following along with me.
Okay. Just add noise to that, to the criteria?
Yeah, just to clarify. I mean, that's kind of implied by, that would be an economic impact in my mind, but it'd be good to clarify it.
And that also gives us a lot of leeway in terms of special permits and consideration of noise and abutters, right?
Correct.
Well,
I'm just talking about, some of the concerns that have been expressed, which we have, contemplated before.
Yeah.
My
Um,
my concerns aren't so much with the. No, I won't go into it. It's okay.
As I recall, Bill, though, that I believe isn't there other regulations that require that essentially there is no noise generated from the shooting range
Yeah,
itself?
it would, we probably I don't even know if we might have had this in there at one point. But yeah, that would be a typical review item for a special permit. But I think in this case, given the circumstances, it's an easy fix, and I'm gonna put minimize visual, audio. Well, actually, audio impacts would probably be better, Bill, wouldn't it? Visual,
Auditory.
what is that? Auditory?
Right?
Yeah, that even better. Auditory or economic impacts. Okay, I've added that in. I think that's fine.
And again, as I recall, I believe there's other regulations, state regulations, I thought, that require that you essentially cannot have odors escaping the shooting range at the property lines, and you cannot have noise essentially escaping as well. And those
Okay.
are state regs that we were trying not to be redundant on. But
Right,
there's
like the air quality or whatever, right?
right.
Yeah, well, that was the one where we did check on air quality, because I checked that and it ended up that was regulated by OSHA. Remember?
Yeah.
Okay, so I added that. So then if that is satisfactory to the board, I would request a vote on that. We're getting kind of close to warrant time, so anything I could close out, I'd kind of like to, but if you're comfortable with that.
And that was the section 7.2. Does the board need to review definitions any further? Okay.
I do not.
I do
Okay,
not
then I'm
either.
gonna accept all the changes in it.
So I'll make a motion to, what's the motion, Bill?
To
recommend
approval of recommend approval of section
Yeah,
7.2.
I got it. So I'll make a motion to recommend the approval of the proposed amendments to town meeting regarding section 7.2 as amended through our discussions tonight. Also, the definitions for firearm bylaw, section 4.1, and the definitions in section 11 regarding light manufacturing of firearms.
I'll second that.
Just a clarification, firearm definition is not 4.1. I have a feeling that's like a version or something.
Oh, 11.
Sure. I amend my motion to section 11 of the definitions as presented in the public hearing attachments.
I second your amended motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? So I'll stop sharing. All in favor by roll call? Jim?
No.
Annette?
No.
Natalie?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That's 3-2, Bill, for recommendation.
Okay, that's for all three items, correct?
That was. And then I will motion to close this public hearing.
Second.
All in favor for closure, Jim?
Yes.
Natalie?
Yes.
Annette? I know Annette might be having trouble. Bill?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Annette, let us know when you can rejoin by audio.
Okay, so light manufacturing was good.
And so, Bill, you have 4-0 to close the hearing. That's sufficient? Yeah, okay. Annette, just let us know when you can rejoin by
Oh,
audio.
I'm sorry, I had a problem with
Oh.
my,
That's okay. Do
I'm here.
you vote to close the hearing?
yes, I do.
Okay, so that's 5-0 to close the hearing, Bill. All right, I'll open up public hearing zoning text amendment for firearm businesses and shooting range, the use table. And I will share screens. As you may recall, we heard in the previous hearing some comments that I believe were more targeted towards this. So if you could keep those comments relevant to our discussions. Bill, we'll just do this quickly. This is the use table that will permit where a firearms business, a shooting range, indoor and outdoor could establish themselves in town. And it looks like for firearm businesses, they could establish themselves in the business, the central business, the HCI, and the industrial districts, all through planning board special permit. And the same would be for shooting ranges, right? Okay. Any discussion on this item?
I guess the only thing I have to say in regards to some of the comments that were, regarding the zoning choices, the district choices, the point about, the central business district being a walkable, a walkable place where people would want to be able to walk into a business and just, on a whim sort of thing, is a nice idea, but we can't regulate capitalism in that way. So I feel like starting to go down that road is a slippery slope. And if there are other reasons to not want it there, then that's fine. But I haven't really heard any clear ones articulated if things like odor and noise and proximity to, odor and noise are dealt with, and proximity to, whatever our list was, schools, daycares, etc., is dealt with. So.
Other thoughts from the board? I'll open this up for public comment. I'll leave public comment. Oh, okay. Linda Thayer, please.
Thank you. Linda Thayer, 14 Chandler Street. Could the board give one or two examples of where they see this, again, shooting range, indoor shooting range? I'm having a hard time picturing where it fits, where the businesses are so, they share spaces, they share buildings. So if someone could speak to where they see it fitting, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I can tell you where a lot of the input came for this was not necessarily like a shooting range as a sole freestanding or individual business, but more as an accessory to a gun retailer. And I think in general, again, this is the feedback I heard, this is what we incorporated into it, would be, a typical place would be in a basement, in a more urban area. That would be typically where you find these located. And it would, the thinking that was brought up was that it was more as an accessory used to like a retailer type of business, rather than then it's like a specific standalone shooting range. However, the way the bylaws are written, it could be a shooting range exclusively.
My perspective is that I don't consider where particular locations for any type of particular business activity, and I think it would be, if I were to think like that, it would be beyond my responsibility as a member of the planning board when I consider zoning bylaws itself. I'm just considering it whether the use is considered appropriate or not, but not any specific location. That comes later in time and considered by others. So it's, I don't think I would ever look at it that way, that I would consider zoning regarding specific property locations as part of my determination. Steve?
I didn't know if I was able to make a comment or not, but just, and I don't want to contradict you, your very valid point, Chris, but just to say there is currently a shooting range at 1 Summer Street in the basement. AKA the old firehouse.
Oh, I forgot.
That's can you elaborate on that?
Sorry, Steve, is that an active shooting range? Is that?
Well, no, nobody's currently using the old firehouse, so it's not an active shooting range. But when the police department was there, they had it. It's more akin to what Bill was saying about an accessory use, because it's essentially in the basement. It's about 50, 60 feet long, and it's only for a single shooter.
Other
With all due respect, I'm sorry, I appreciate you pointing that out. It doesn't, that's not really what this is about though, right? That was a police, I mean, someone can't move in there right now, or I guess they can because there is no zoning, but.
So Linda,
Yeah.
and you,
Okay.
you and I have great conversations. It's just during public hearings, we can provide feedback and comments to boards, to the board members for their deliberation. I think I will allow all perspectives to be given. Is there other public comments? Okay. Any further changes, any further requests on this item? All right, I'll make a motion to recommend the proposed table amendments for the use table as discussed for the firearms business zoning bylaw to recommend a town meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Jim. All in favor of the all in favor by vote? Jim?
No.
Natalie?
Yeah.
Bill?
Yes.
Annette?
No.
And I vote yes. That's 3-2 for the recommendation of town meeting, Bill.
Okay.
And I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
All in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Natalie?
Yeah.
Bill?
Yes.
Annette?
Yes.
And I vote yes. And that's the business for tonight.
Can I get the meeting minutes? If anybody had a chance to look at the minutes?
No. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I've been busy.
Okay.
Natalie and Jim, I noted you vote no. I just want you to know that I would always appreciate your input to make things better, or however I can include your perspective. Okay.
It was
Annette.
Oh, sorry. Did I say Natalie? It's so late. I'm so
Yes.
sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yes,
Oh,
we
look
are.
at least you didn't call her Annette Benning tonight, or Annette Funicella.
One or the other.
See how my brain works.
Yes, we're much too serious.
Anyway, I just want you to know, I feel free to always speak up about things that mean, that we could do better. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night,
sorry
everyone.
It went long, but I appreciate.
And we still need to close the meeting. So Jim, would you do the honors for us?
I certainly would. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we close tonight's meeting.
Thanks, and I'll second that. All by roll call. Jim?
Yes.
Natalie?
Yeah.
Bill?
Yes.
Annette?
Yes.
I vote yes. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night now.
Good night.
Bill Nemser, I presume you can pause and take care of the recording and all that?
Yeah.